the Cardcaptor Wizard of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326 Who defines what is right? Adam did not explain the two's questions in depth, only saying that it was indeed a spell to open the lock, but it was more powerful than the ordinary powerful unlocking spell. Basically, as long as there is something blocking the door or blocking the road, whether it is a mechanism, a spell or a seal, this magic can open it. Adam explained how powerful this magic was. The two sighed immediately. Sebastian wanted to ask if he could learn it, but unfortunately Adam could not convert this magic that directly involved the rules of the world into a wand action plus spell casting mode. However, there is a simplified version. Although it is a simplified version, it is more powerful than the best unlocking spell Sebastian has mastered now, and it can also open the mechanism. With a wonderful tool invisibility cloak given by Adam, Sebastian's night tour has been enhanced again at an epic level. Can I teach it to Yug? He seems to encounter more mechanisms, door locks, etc. than I do. Of course, Adam naturally had no objection, but Sebastian was indeed capable. He thought of himself about the study and thought of Yug when he got the powerful unlocking spell after a chat. Of course, the whole study was checked. The book Adam saw on the table just now was just a drop in the ocean compared to the storage of the whole study. However, Adam looked around and found that 7 or 8 of the 10 books were related to black magic, and the rest did not look like serious magic, involving some human body modification and the like. Could it be that Voldemort also entered here and got the legacy left by Salazar Slytherin? Adam saw some familiar magic in these books and couldn't help frowning. He originally wanted to take all these books away, but if that was the case, it might affect the future. Adam turned his head and looked at Sebastian and Amines. If he didn't participate, then it might be Sebastian and Amines who came in here. If there was no way out, they should still be able to come in. So, Sebastian, Amines, what do you think of this study? Well, I think it's a little gloomy. Sebastian's attention was on another book on the table, which recorded a lot of black magic that Salazar Slytherin had researched or was researching. Amines didn't respond. Adam looked at him and saw that Amines ran behind the statue of Salazar Slytherin. Amines, why don't you go back? Amines. Adam, who had just retracted his sight, heard Sebastian's voice, put down the book he had just taken out and walked over, and found that Amines was staring at a notebook in a daze. I'm fine. Although Amines said this, he didn't look fine at all. Adam couldn't help but look at the notebook in his hand. So that's it. It's Salazar Slytherin's diary? Or maybe it's more appropriate to say an essay. Anyway, Amines saw in it that Salazar Slytherin couldn't find people who shared his ideals at Hogwarts, that is, people who supported the pure blood theory. So, they are right. Putting down the notebook, Amines took a deep breath, put his hands over his eyes, and said in a trembling voice, "No wonder my aunt was trapped outside the door. No wonder I was born with these cursed eyes. It turns out that we are the wrong ones." Amines. Sebastian looked at Amines and was a little overwhelmed. Don't think so, Amines. Is Salazar Slytherin's point of view necessarily correct? Who defines what is correct? Adam reached out and patted Amines' shoulder, causing Amines' body to tremble. If he is really right, then why can't he find people who share his ideas in Hogwarts? And why don't the founders of the other 3 colleges agree with his ideas, so that he left Hogwarts alone? Looking at Amines' stunned face, Adam smiled slightly. You and your aunt, whether what you insist on is correct or not, will not change because of what Salazar Slytherin thinks. The key is what you think. What do we think? Amines murmured to himself. Yes, what has happened cannot be changed. Even if I can go back to the past, I can only change things that are not clear to me now. Adam smiled and stared at Amines' eyes, exploring the cause of the blindness of this pair of eyes. Originally, he didn't care much about Amines' blindness, thinking that it might be a physical defect caused by inbreeding, which Adam couldn't cure, just like when he treated Anne before. The cleansing card can purify things and even concepts that are considered impurities, but it cannot make up for what is missing, nor can it correct what is wrong. After all, in this world, it is not the case that if the concept of disease is purified, people will only be healthy. There are also many cases where the disease replaces the concept of health. In this case, using the cleansing card will eliminate the disease, but the person will die. But according to Amines, This doesn't seem to be a simple physiological defect. After an inspection, Adam really found something wrong. A layer of magical energy covered Amin's eyes, similar to some kind of curse. Was it a curse cast on him by the Gaunt family? Or was it really because Amin's ideas were so unorthodox that the blood of Salazar Slytherin cursed him? Although the following speculation is a bit outrageous, the possibility is not zero. After all, love can rebound the killing curse. There are still some more abstract and idealistic powers in magic no matter what the situation is. Since he has discovered it, and this curse is completely extra, it will be easy to deal with. Thinking of this, Adam stretched out his hand and flicked it in front of Omnis's eyes. The important thing is the future. Don't forget that the last child of the Gaunt family is still waiting for you to take care of and teach. The future of the Gaunt family will be defined by you. The previous inspection took only a few seconds, and Adam continued to speak just now, which made people feel that he paused for a while to wait for Omnis to digest it slowly. Everything was so natural. Omnis was still immersed in Adam's words, deeply shocked in his heart, but at the same time he couldn't help but agree with Adam's words. At this time, Omnis hadn't discovered that he had recovered his eyesight. Of course, this may not be considered recovery for Omnis, who has been blind since childhood. Salazar Slytherin's study was extremely dim. After they entered, they only lit candles in various places in the study, and the lighting ability was really average, but such a big change was not ignored by Omnis for too long. Especially the fact that the bean-sized candle flame jumping in the peripheral vision disappeared after entering the blind spot of vision. The perception spell he used was more powerful than ordinary people's vision at close range. When has there been a blind spot of vision? So Omnis turned his head to look at the candle on the side. After a moment of surprise, looked at his wand, and then slowly put the wand down, canceling the perception spell that had been maintained. After doing all this, Omnis turned his head to look at the candle again. What is it? Chapter 327. A brief separation. Don't stare directly at the light source, Omnis. You have been blind for too long and have just recovered. Your eyes are still a little fragile now. Adam looked at Omnis, who was completely stunned, and sighed. Look at you, you are crying. If you look any further, you might go blind again. Such injuries are difficult to treat. Feeling some stinging in his eyes, Omnis quickly moved his gaze to the dim direction, but still couldn't accept the fact that he suddenly gained vision. How could I? Yeah, what's going on? Maybe Salazar Slytherin showed up, Adam said matter-of-factly. Omnis. Sebastian, who would believe this? Isn't it obvious that you did it? But, think about it, since Adam can cure Annie's curse, it's not impossible to cure Omnis' curse, right? When they came out of the study, Sebastian and Omnis didn't know what to say. This time, they really, how should I put it, got much more than they expected. Sure enough, this should be the correct way in and out. Adam looked at the passage leading directly to the study behind him and nodded. It would be ridiculous if Salazar Slytherin himself had to take the same path every time he returned to his study. Regardless of the enchantment on the door, the maze actually had to be walked in a long circle to get through. Then Adam's eyes fell on the two of them, and both of them brought out what they wanted from the study. Sebastian was holding a spell book left by Salazar Slytherin that he found in the study. It seemed to be a textbook compiled by Salazar Slytherin himself, but it was full of dark magic. I know it's not a formal textbook. Omnis, needless to say, was of course carrying his aunt's bones, and Adam obviously made a direct copy of the study. Although the study should still be there in the future Hogwarts, who knows whether there will be some unscrupulous guy in the next 100 years who'll destroy the books in it. Take them all away. Yes, I'm talking about you, the two-hole socket. Do you know where the Gaunt family's cemetery is? Let me bury her for you. Adam looked at Omnis. Sebastian's book was okay, but how could he carry a skeleton like Omnis around the school? No, I think I will bury her myself when the time comes. After thinking for a while, Omnis declined Adam's proposal, and then looked at Adam. Adam, can you help me hide my aunt's bones temporarily? Adam thought for a while, took out a glass candy bottle, and then took out a rectangular metal candy box, and then looked at Omnis. In your Gunter family, do you prefer burial or cremation? Omnis opened his mouth and finally said, burial. So, the shrunken bones lay in the metal candy box. Adam poured out the candies in the box, threw one into his mouth, and gave the rest to Sebastian and Omnis. It's mixed fruit flavored and very popular. Try it and see what candy will be popular 100 years from now. After receiving it, Sebastian grabbed one and threw it into his mouth, It's strawberry flavored, ominous. Took the candy and the candy box with a complicated expression. Thanks, I always feel that my aunt's bones will be stained with the smell of powdered sugar and candy, regardless of ominous who was in a complicated mood over there. Sebastian suddenly said while eating candy, Adam, are you going back to the future again? Huh? Why do you say that? Adam looked at Sebastian. He really had such an idea. The research on the soul has initially yielded results. Continuing to improve Anne's treatment will not bring much benefit to Adam. Yog obviously does not need his care to kill all the way to the super god, but he no longer needs to keep an eye on him. After staying in the past for so long, although he made new friends, he hasn't been able to go home for a long time, and he can't meet and chat with his brothers. He still misses them a little. Looking at the changes you made to Annie's treatment plan, I can guess it. Hearing Sebastian's answer, Adam nodded. Indeed, in addition to improving efficiency, the newly improved treatment plan also features automatic hosting. Will you come back? Of course, the people I plan to take away haven't been taken away yet. Adam looked at the two people and smiled. The next time we come, it should be when Ominous and the others graduate. Sebastian nodded thoughtfully and asked again, then after you take Ominous and the others away next time, will you come back? You, Ominous, and Yug? Well, hearing this question, Adam touched his chin. Don't look at me as if I can travel to the past casually. In fact, time travel still has certain risks. That's it. Disappointment appeared on Sebastian's face. Adam spread his hands and said, well, life is like this. Whether you like it or not, you always have to experience encounters and partings again and again, so you have to cherish every time you spend together. In all the time I have spent with you, this is the first time you have made me feel that you are really the headmaster of Hogwarts. Sebastian seemed to have adjusted his mentality and said with a smile, well, I'll tell you a secret. I used a fake identity when I was the principal. Adam suddenly turned into Professor Gandalf in white skin and winked at the two of them mischievously. Don't tell anyone else. After that, Adam disappeared in front of the two of them. Then, see you in 2 years. Remember to tell Yog for me. Looking at the empty space in front of him, Sebastian was startled. He's gone now. Yeah, Ominous nodded and looked at Sebastian. Look at the bright side. With a lifespan of wizards, as long as you maintain a healthy schedule and don't encounter any accidents, we will still have a chance to meet even after we go for 100 years. Wow, this is really a blessing of comfort. Sebastian complained. What should you call me when you see me? What? Grandpa Saru, if you don't mind. Mines shrugged. Let's go. There are still 2 years. You have enough time to think about what to say when we meet. Yes, the most urgent thing now is to put your aunt's bones away. You have to put it in a place where it is not easy to be discovered, otherwise I don't believe what outrageous stories will be spread after others find out that you put a skeleton in the candy box. Sebastian glanced at the candy box in Omine's hand, and his eyes twitched suddenly. In fact, with a precedent of those strange candies in Honeyduke's candy store, maybe someone will think that this is a skull-shaped candy and put it directly into their mouth. Hearing this, Omine's eyes twitched. Then I really have to find a place that is not easy to be discovered. Chapter 328. I want to buy osmanthus flowers and wine. Home. That's what it tastes like. In his own home, Adam ate the food on the table with contentment. In terms of deliciousness, the dishes Adam cooked were obviously more in line with his own appetite. In terms of authenticity, Ms. Lee, who has been away from home for many years, could not make it more authentic than those restaurants in China, let alone mix in some French food ingredients influenced by Mr. Reed. But this table of dishes has a warmth that even Adam can't replicate. It's a taste called home. As for the more distant things, the taste of home can only be deposited in the depths of memory. It is useless to think about something that is already determined to be unattainable. Only by cherishing the present can we embrace the future. Ms. Lee and Mr. Reed looked at each other. The child didn't know what was wrong. He suddenly ran home and said he wanted to have a dinner at home. Could it be that he was homesick? Didn't you travel abroad before? I heard that the travel plan is quite complicated and takes a long time. Just because I miss home, I run back halfway to have a meal and then continue traveling? That's pretty good. Anyway, it's not much less than the travel expenses. The two of them stopped thinking more and began to ask Adam about any interesting things he had encountered while traveling. After charging the battery at home for 2 days, Adam started wandering around, going to the Ministry of Magic to ask Eugene about their current work status, going to Egypt to see if Uther had ascended the throne, and so on. By the way, He also went to the North Pole after visiting Colin's house, found Colin who was chatting with a heart seal pup, and pulled him into the group chat. At this point, Cologne, who has been missing for a long time, finally returns. Diddy, no serious person has a meeting early in the morning. What a good boy, you actually went to the North Pole. No wonder I haven't heard from you. Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. Speaking of which, it's so cold in the North Pole, can a quill still write? The sun was shining in the sky? No problem, I did some research. This quill pen is also a magic item. Writing does not rely on ink but the contact between the pen and the parchment. The world's #1 magician, Uther, is right. By the way, this is your first time using this, right? Why have you already changed your username? Is it so quick to get started? But these names are quite directional. Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. Oh, if you just study this kind of thing, you will be able to do it. Colin Berg, the world's #1 magician. Huh? You actually chose to use your real name? But in a group where everyone uses other names, it seems to be another kind of maverick. Colin Berg, where do you change the name? Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. No serious person would have a meeting early in the morning. The world's best magician. After some guidance from Bernard, Colin found the settings page on the back of the parchment. Friends of animals. Oh, this magic prop is so convenient. Now I don't have to worry about the owl being eaten by magical animals on the road, or being unable to withstand the harsh environment. Who is a serious person to have a meeting early in the morning? Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. The world's #1 magician. Didn't you just carry the owl around with you before? Animal friends. Yes, the world's best magician. Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. This is a bad username for you. I think it would be better to change it to Friends of Animals, except the owl. No serious person has a meeting early in the morning. Hey, can you still draw an expression on this? Let me try. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and we all had a nice chat, but the group chat soon stopped due to their own matters. People still have to grow up after all. Adam put down the parchment and sighed, turning to look out the window. I wanted to buy sweet scented osmanthus and drink wine, but it didn't work out. Young you already has the longevity medicine in the magic stone. It seems that we need to research a potion or magic that makes people immortal. It seems that the longevity medicine has the same effect no matter how old you are, and you don't have to wait until the end of life, so it has now been added to the daily diet of Ms. Lee and Mr. Reed. Adam said that it is a health product for wizards, so they insist on taking it. Brothers Adam are also planning to arrange it for them. As for the magic or potion to maintain immortality, although I don't know if it can be researched, I still have to try it. However, even if he could maintain his youthful appearance, Adam knew that the carefree days of the past could never be returned to him. Time flies. I am afraid that in the end only the self anchored in matter, mind and spirit will remain unchanged. Right, let me see what I need to pay attention to next. Adam took out the memo. Although he no longer forgets things, he will overlook some things due to the complexity of various matters, especially time travel that may cause confusion in time. It is always good to take notes. On the British side, things to pay attention to include the establishment of taxation and security management systems, the movements of goblins, the progress of classifying various magical animals, the treatment of prisoners who have successfully undergone Azkaban transformation, etc. With a thought in Adam's mind, the shorthand quill automatically marked the following item. Okay, these are all being carried out in an orderly manner. The goblins, it's better to wait for them to act first and completely expose their ambitions. This way, they will have a reason to kill the goblins completely when they fight back. Adam's eyes fell on one of the lines, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Oh, how could I have overlooked this? Let me check what day it is today. He snapped his fingers, and the golden cursive words outlined today's date. Adam immediately sat up. Less than a month. Let me think about it. The publicity work can be done. It will be very interesting then. Right. Adam sat up and paraded to Hogsmeade, the former Hogsmeade village. Now Hogsmeade has become a park-like facility. Adam didn't turn Hogsmeade village into a square after all, mainly because those modern facilities that use electricity seem to be a bit ahead of the times for wizards, and are not very conducive to attracting customers. And without those facilities, apart from anything else, a closed square without lights, candles, and air conditioning, even dogs won't go there, so it ended up like this. But fortunately, after buying the entire Hogsmeade, the land was more than enough for Adam to open the Envision store at present. The main commercial shops in Hogsmeade are composed of 3 parts. First, there are entertainment shops with obvious Dream series, such as Dream Dessert Workshop, Dream Cinema, Dream Snack Street, etc. These shops are openly owned by Adam. Then there are parchment, quill pens, potions, potion materials, crucibles, magical animals, magical plants, astronomical telescopes, flying brooms and other daily necessities that may be used in Hogwarts. These shops do not seem to have anything to do with Adam. Finally, there are some miscellaneous shops, such as restaurants, bars, etc., only some of which are openly owned by Adam, and the destination of Adam's trip is the very popular Dream Cinema. Chapter 329: The Problem Behind the Movie. Boss, seeing Adam arriving, the general manager of the cinema quickly said hello. Adam waved his hand to interrupt the other party's continued greetings, and went straight to the point. How is the production of the first part of The Boy Who Lived going? It can be said that there are no problems at all in terms of the production schedule, and the production was even completed before the expected date. After the general manager finished speaking, he couldn't help but take out a handkerchief and wipe the sweat from his forehead. It's just, there are other problems. Oh, Adam frowned. What's the problem? That the character who appeared in the movie, the general manager couldn't help but look at Adam carefully as he spoke, always paying attention to Adam's face. Since this movie involves quite a few real people, everyone thinks it may cause some controversy in this regard. Oh? Why didn't I know that there is such a thing as image rights in the wizarding world? The chocolate frog manufacturer must not close down. Oh, it seems that it is almost done now. Adam realized belatedly that the chocolate frog was the flagship product of Honeydukes Candy Store, and the store was now his own and was renamed Fantasy Dessert Workshop after the entire Hogsmeade fell under Adam's control. The Fantasy Dessert Workshop went through 2 rounds of expansion. Now there are 3 stores in Hogsmeade alone, selling different products. The products of the previous Honeydukes Candy Shop are also back on the shelves. Focusing on a nostalgic style. Although the taste is inferior to other products of Fantasy Dessert Workshop, many wizards are still willing to buy some to relive the taste of their childhood, especially since these candies have been out of print for several years. Ambrosio was moved to tears as soon as the sales of these candies, which had declined several times before Honeydukes Candy Store was sold to Adam, were put on the shelves. This craze probably won't last long, but the popularity of Hogwarts, maybe we can do it more often, and get some season-limited, month-limited candies and the like. You can even make a kind of century candy that is only sold once every 100 years. It will only be sold at the turn of the century. If it is made more exquisitely, it may even have commemorative collection value. The year 2000 is just around the corner, and it seems to be very promising. Just when Adam's mind had jumped to the business on the other side, the general manager here couldn't help but smile bitterly. Even though I say this, it may still cause a lot of controversy. What's the point? Controversy is the only way to gain popularity. If it doesn't work, just change the name. If it doesn't work, just change the height, short, fat, thin, gender, skin color, etc. Adam waved his hand casually, but the general manager just smiled bitterly. After all, this is an adaptation of a real-life story. The wizarding world is only that big, and there are so many people who have experienced it personally. You can tell who is who just by asking. This kind of trick cannot really blur the identity. The Muggle people will probably yell at you if they are provoked, but wizards can throw spells. Throwing a thunderbolt explosion at the cinema is no joke. Even if Adam had all the power behind him, he couldn't stop him from pulling out a magic wand on the spot. They would be the ones to be bombed. Oh, okay, let me think about it. Adam no longer made things difficult for him, nor did he mess around, but seriously thought about the solution to this matter. In fact, whether it is easy to solve or solve, a considerable part of the negative descriptions in the movie are basically facts. Adam recorded them truthfully, and it is not easy for those characters with less roles to jump out and refute. After all, there are so many negative portrayals of people, and your role is so small. People may not notice you unless you stand out, but if you stand out, people will pay attention to your problems. There are generally 2 types of people left. One type is people who do not have those negative behaviors in reality after Adam changed the plot, and the other type is people who have more scenes and are very eye-catching. In addition, there is another special category that must be considered, that is, some personal secrets will be involved in the movie. It's Not impossible to come to the door one by one, Adam. Turn to look at the general manager on the side. Let's make a list of the people in the entire series of movies who have these characteristics. Since we want to solve it, we should solve all the problems involved in the entire series. Yes, I will make a list as soon as possible. The general manager breathed a sigh of relief. I'll give you 3 days, Adam nodded. The script he gave originally came with the names of the characters, and also gave the written records of the current world. Therefore, it was just a matter of human power to compare the two and select the people who met the requirements. The general manager went straight to work, and Adam stretched out his hand to rub his brow. Everyone else is easy to deal with. Even if Professor Gandalf's identity is not revealed, there are only a few people who dare not give Adam face due to his current status. Although Adam has kept a very low profile, and more than half of the properties in Hogsmeade do not officially belong to him, he still does not hide the fact that the land belongs to him, including the fact that Adam accounted for about 70% of the ancient souls after the First World War in Gringotts Pavilion. In addition to real estate, there are desserts, entertainment, food, daily necessities, magical animals, magical plants. Although there are few properties officially attributed to Adam, there are some from all walks of life, especially magical plants, which is the monopoly industry exposed by Adam. He has almost monopolized all magical plant-related industries in the British wizarding world, including but not limited to potion materials and other aspects, under the vicious price competition with an average discount of 30% and a minimum discount of 10% at the most intense time. All competitors were squeezed out by Adam. After all, their selling prices are lower than your costs, and their output is higher than yours. Who can withstand this? Of course, after squeezing out competitors, although the sales price of Adam's store returned to normal levels, he did not raise prices due to monopoly, which is simply the conscience of the industry. By the way, the only fish in the magical plant industry that was not squeezed out by Adam was the greenhouse at Hogwarts. Back then, Professor Sprout thought that the greenhouse he applied for might be discounted, so he filled in a little more. As a result, Professor Gandalf approved all the greenhouses applied for by Professor Sprout with a wave of his hand, plus the greenhouses applied for by other newly appointed professors of herbology. Now the greenhouses at Hogwarts have overcapacity to the point that all the teachers and students in the school cannot digest them, so they have to start selling them to the outside world in general. Just on the surface, Adam's business empire has been developing rapidly during the economic depression caused by Voldemort's rampage. Now it is a rising capital star, and it is also a monopoly of a very important industry such as magical plants. But even with such an identity, there are still people in the wizarding world who dare not give him face, and he has a high proportion of roles in the movie, Professor Snape. If that past is not exposed, he will be a purely negative role, but if it is exposed, the picture is too beautiful. Adam dare not think about it with Professor Snape's personality. He is afraid that he will rush directly to the principal's office and cast a killing curse on him, and then jump directly from the window on the 8th floor. Although Adam can ignore Professor Snape's killing curse, he can't just ignore Professor Snape as a human being. Hogwarts is currently short of talents in potion studies. Chapter 330, Professor Snape, Hunting Time. In fact, the best solution is to completely hide the hidden line of Professor Snape, but Adam is really unwilling to do so. On the one hand, the hidden thread of Professor Snape is too important in the Harry Potter story and is an important part of the plot. If it is removed directly, there will be many logical inaccuracies. On the other hand, his original intention of making this movie was to distribute every knife he had eaten to everyone in the world. How many knives did Professor Snape have on his body? How could he be worthy of the knife he had lost back then? Tears. But this cannot ignore Professor Snape's wishes. Adam feels that Professor Snape's story is worthy of everyone crying, but Professor Snape himself certainly does not think so. Is there anything that can impress Professor Snape? Adam touched his chin. It involved Professor Snape's most unsavory past, and Professor Snape had to accept it unless he was given a new life. Yesterday is like yesterday's death. Only a completely reborn future can make it possible for Professor Snape to accept it. That is a future that will never appear in reality under normal circumstances. Adam's eyes flickered slightly. This was the best way he could think of. If it didn't work, he could only reluctantly cut off the most critical part of the plot. In that case, Professor Snape might become a villain without any reversal, and in that case Professor Snape might not care very much. Well, I hope it can succeed. Adam's current mentality is like that of the director who submits a film for review. It would be best if he could retain the entire plot and not even want to cut a second after receiving the message from the Patronus. Professor Snape came to the principal's office for the first time in a long time. What? A rare visitor, Professor Reed, or Professor Gandalf. As soon as Professor Snape opened the door, he looked at Adam with evil eyes. I didn't expect you could remember it. Is there a school here where you hold the position of principal? Ahem. Faced with Professor Snape's sharp accusation from the very beginning, Adam did not pretend to be Gandalf, and naturally he could not use Gandalf's tone to explain it away, so he could only cough twice in embarrassment. I'm not at Hogwarts during this period. I actually have some business to attend to, and isn't Hogwarts running very well now? Professor McGonagall's burden is not heavy, Professor. Snape crossed his arms and let out a non-committal snort. Although Adam has been away from Hogwarts for a long time, Hogwarts is indeed thriving now, and unlike Professor Dumbledore, who likes to eat sweets in his free time, he tentatively believes that Adam is doing serious business. Because of this, he rushed to the principal's office immediately after receiving the message from the patron saint. So, what is the purpose of allowing you to take time out of your busy schedule to come back to Hogwarts to find me? During this period, I have been studying the magic of time. Hearing Adam's words, Professor Snape's eyes flashed with a strange look. He is not the kind of short-sighted wizard who knows how powerful and uncontrollable time-related magic is. There are few wizards in the entire wizarding world who dare to engage in such research. Being discovered by the Ministry of Magic will directly lead to life imprisonment in Azkaban, but with Adam's identity, there is no need to worry that he will be captured and sent to Azkaban to be imprisoned. Then Professor Snape heard Adam say, during this period of time, I have traveled to the past, jumped out of time, and observed worlds parallel to ours. As Professor Snape's brows furrowed, Adam briefly explained the concept of parallel time and space. To put it simply, parallel time and space are possibilities that extend from each time node and are different from the present. So, you came to me just to share with me your illegal magic research during this period, Professor. Snape's face was already 2 shades darker than when he entered the door. Although there are several potions professors now sharing the teaching tasks with me, I am not free to this point yet. If you have this time, I suggest you share these portraits on the wall, and I still have a pot of potions to deal with. As he spoke, Professor Snape noticed that the portrait on the wall was empty at the moment. Don't be impatient, Professor Snape. In these many parallel worlds and in the past time and space, I have seen many things. At this time, Adam seemed to be playing the role of Gandalf, the daily headmaster of Hogwarts, and said with a smile, I decided to make a movie out of a story I saw. Professor Snape, would you like to watch it in advance, Professor? Snape certainly knows what movies are. In fact, he is a person who keeps up with the changes of the times, and he has also gone to Dream Cinema to watch movies several times. But how can he be interested in talking about this with Adam now? Before Professor Snape spoke with a sullen face, Adam spoke again. That is a parallel world where you and Professor Dumbledore's plan continues without my intervention, Professor. Snape's mouth moved, and the words he was about to say stopped in his throat. He frowned and began to recall what is in Professor Dumbledore's plan was. That world is really interesting. I can't explain it for a while. It's better for you, Professor Snape, to experience it yourself. Don't worry, it won't take you a long time. It was difficult to explain in words, so Adam simply let Professor Snape watch it by himself. As he spoke, Professor Snape fell into a dream composed of movies. When dreaming, the human brain actually runs at high speed. You may have spent a very long time in a dream, but it is only a few minutes in reality. 10 minutes later, Professor Snape opened his eyes and looked extremely ugly. Adam Reed? How dare you, Professor? Snape pulled out his wand while speaking, and even the blue veins could be seen on the part of his arm exposed from his sleeve. The desk was broken into 2 pieces in front of Adam, and 2 red lights followed and fell in front of him. It was the fire of the thunder explosion. Adam's eyelids twitched wildly when he saw it, and he raised his hand to arrange a rough magic forbidden field around him. Why is it rough? Because this magic forbidden field is essentially a continuous spell that ends all spells. The wizard's spells will basically be disturbed and cannot take effect within the range, but those who can truly control the magic power accurately will not be affected. Seeing that the spell could not be cast, Professor Snape rolled up his sleeves and rushed directly towards Adam. Adam, calm down. Calm down, Professor Snape. I'm going to kill you. I swear I will kill you. Calm down first. If you have something to say, you can talk slowly. Finally, Professor Snape, who had struggled to exhaustion, lay on the ground, but his eyes were still fixed on Adam, full of murderous intent. "Professor Snape, listen to me first. First of all, you can't beat me. Secondly, I plan to release this movie. Do you think there is room for negotiation?" Adam saw that the murderous intent in Professor Snape's eyes was getting more and more fierce, and he coughed and continued, "I really think this story is very educational. It can make people realize the power of love, especially your role, Professor Snape. The educational significance is simply unforgettable." Professor Snape just thought that Adam was very noisy now, and he could fight again when he recovered some strength. Seeing this situation was not unexpected at all, Adam had to use the trump card he prepared. "Professor Snape, do you want a wife or not?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331: A chance to redeem regrets with your own hands. "Professor Snape, do you want a wife?" The words Adam spoke made Snape's brain stop for a moment. Afterwards, Professor Snape's eyes showed not only murderous intent but also a bit of embarrassment. Adam clearly knew about that past, yet he still humiliated him like this. "If you want, as long as you ask, I can bring Lily Evans from the parallel world, even the Lily Evans from when you were young and before we broke up." Hearing Adam's words, Professor Snape's brain stopped again, but then what filled his heart was not joy, but anger. Okay, you don't have to ask, I know this plan won't work." Seeing Professor Snape's mood, Adam sighed at first. Professor Snape's love for Lily was pure love, not pure possessiveness. Later, it was mixed with guilt for causing the other person's death. This cannot be solved by simply bringing in Lily from the parallel world. Fortunately, this is not his real trump card. Since you feel that you are no longer worthy of her, then, where's the former Severus Snape? Adam looked at Professor Snape and said, "You may not know that there are two pairs of Professor Dumbledore and Professor Grindelwald in Hogwarts now. In addition to them now, there are also two pairs of them when they were young in the parallel world." While Professor Snape was stunned, Adam added, "If I bring Lily Evans and Severus Snape from the parallel world who are still studying at Hogwarts to this world and let them study at Hogwarts, do you think you can make up for the regrets of the past?" For example, he pulled little Severus aside, who was planning to share his progress in dark magic research with Lily, slapped him on the back of the head and said, "Stop researching dark magic, otherwise Lily will have to run away." When he was a student, Professor Snape was able to invent the upside-down golden bell and the shadowless magic, which control an output and can only be lifted by a specific spell. With such a talent for black magic, he spent a lifetime studying black magic. It can be said that Lily is indispensable for the achievements that ended when she was a student. Probably every time Professor Snape came into contact with dark magic after that day, Lily's disappointed eyes would flash in his mind. After listening to Adam's words, Professor Snape truly fell into silence this time. Not only did his brain not stop, but it actually turned faster. Are you looking at the lives of Severus Snape and Lily Evans from a spectator's perspective? Professor Snape had to shamefully admit that he was really a little tempted. Professor Snape's life has fallen into complete darkness. Apart from his remaining hobbies, his life is now almost a walking corpse. If it can be exchanged for Severus Snape and Lily Evans to come together, then it seems that Professor Snape's life will fall deeper into darkness. Actually, this option is also a backup plan. Seeing that Professor Snape seemed to be agreeing, Adam couldn't help but say, after all, this option would really put Professor Snape at risk. Relatively speaking, his preferred plan is actually, if you could do it all over again, Professor Snape, would you do it over again? Adam looked at Professor Snape. "I can send your soul to a parallel world, to when Severus Snape was still in school at Hogwarts, before anything happened. You can live there to your current age, then I bring you and your family back to this world." Adam looked at Professor Snape, whose pupils were trembling, and continued, "But it must be a parallel world where the future is not yet clear, otherwise your changes will deviate from the future of that parallel world. So the disadvantage of this plan is that I cannot guarantee whether unexpected things will happen after you arrive in that world matter." Adam took a deep breath. "In other words, if you die due to various reasons before reaching your current age, then you are really dead and cannot return to this world." Although Adam can go back in time and copy a Professor Snape, the Professor Snape in front of him is indeed mortal. This is the drawback of this plan after all. It was to interfere in a parallel world. Adam could set up a good time to get people back, and also to get a whole family, which was already the limit of his current ability, but Adam actually prefers this plan in his heart after all. A movie is just a movie. Even if the previous paragraph and part of the content of this series are basically consistent with reality, there are still many places that deviate from reality. It can be considered a pseudo-documentary at best in this case. Even if Adam said that the past mentioned in the movie were true, many people would not believe it. In reality, only Professor Dumbledore knew about it. Under this situation, Professor Snape suddenly had more family members around him. Based on the character he showed in the past, everyone felt that Professor Snape was hiding it well. As for the story in the movie, it was purely art creation. What? Professor Snape's wife looks a lot like Lily Evans, that's right. How else would Adam come up with such a movie plot? Art is not completely rootless. On the other hand, only the one who is redeemed in this plan is the real Professor Snape. As for the previous plan, let Professor Snape stay alone in a dark corner, watching Severus Snape and Lily Evans get together or something. Adam thinks this knife is worth another movie. Of course, the final choice is up to Professor Snape himself. It is also possible that Adam thinks this is a redemption for Professor Snape, but does he not think so? After thinking for a long time, Professor Snape still chose to go to the parallel world by himself. People will eventually be troubled by the things they can't get in their youth. If there is a chance to redeem the regrets by themselves, who would choose to give this opportunity to others, even if this other person is another self? While Adam arranged the magic circle, he reminded Professor Snape of the precautions after going to the parallel world, mainly to let him pay attention to safety, and be careful not to reveal the truth. In fact, Adam didn't have to worry too much about confidentiality. Professor Snape could be a good spy on Voldemort's side, and he should still have this self-control ability, but there happened to be Lily Evans there, and Adam was worried that Professor Snape would not be able to control his emotions. As for safety, Adam could only wish him good luck. The development of the parallel world was destined to be different from the present world. Adam didn't know where the difference would be in the uncertain parallel world in the future. If he was really unlucky and encountered a meteorite hitting the Earth or a zombie crisis, it was not something that could be changed by human power, so he could only consider himself unlucky. In short, when everything was ready, Professor Snape's eyes were full of determination when he stood in the center of the magic circle. Good luck, Professor Snape. As Adam finished speaking, Professor Snape's soul left his body and went to the parallel world. Chapter 332 Professor Snape returns. There is a certain difference in the speed of time, but Professor Snape will be back in about 20 hours. Adam checked the magic circle and took a deep breath. I hope Professor Snape will have good luck. As for what's next, Adam took out a crystal ball and controlled the magic circle in the crystal ball to link with the magic circle in front of him. Just let me know what happened over there in Kankang. Although Adam had adjusted the time in the two worlds so that the parallel world could change much faster than this world, he could also use the crystal ball to record what happened in that world first, and then slow down and watch it after connecting the crystal ball, adjusting the speed, and looking at Severus Snape slowly opening his eyes as projected by the crystal ball. With the complicated emotions in his eyes, Adam smiled. Coca-Cola, popcorn on the couch, everything is ready. The next step is to wait. Oh, you have to stand up. Take this opportunity to rush forward and confess. Just when Adam was slapped on his thigh, the magic circle suddenly lit up. Oh, yes, it's time to come back. Hurry up, Adam. Then remembered that just 20 hours had passed, and quickly put the crystal ball away. It had been recorded anyway, and it would be no problem to find some free time to look at it later after the light of the magic circle dimmed. Adam was stunned when he saw the three people appearing in the magic circle. Let me choke, Merlin, because the time was too short. Even if Adam skipped a few paragraphs in the middle, he only watched the plot of the few days after Professor Snape passed away. But the Professor Snape who comes out of the magic circle now is Professor Snape who went to the parallel world more than 20 years ago. How should I put it? If what Adam saw in the crystal ball was still Professor Snape, then the person coming out of the magic circle now looked more like Alan Rickman. The delicately styled short hair, the straight shirt and waistcoat, the lingering gloom that had always been on his face is now gone. Can you even see a bit of cheerfulness from the slightly raised corners of his mouth? Cheerful. Although he knew that Professor Snape's life would definitely change a lot if he had a new life, Adam could not help but be stunned by such a big change. How should he explain to the Slytherin students that their headmaster suddenly became like this after disappearing for a day? In the case of Professor Snape, no student from Slytherin House was allowed to shout, "The bold thief dares to use Polyjuice Potion to impersonate our dean." After Professor Snape appeared in the magic circle, it took him 2 seconds to recover from the sudden change in the surrounding environment. His eyes glanced around and then landed on Adam, with a flash of emotion and gratitude in his eyes. "Professor Reed, long time no see." Long time no see. "Well, actually it hasn't been that long to me, it's only been a day." Adam shook his head and came back to his senses, looking at the other 2 people in the magic circle. "These 2 should be my wife, Lily Snape." When he said this, Professor Snape's tone could be described as honey mixed with oil, and Adam, who had not yet gotten used to such a huge change in Professor Snape, couldn't help but shudder. However, Adam did not forget the etiquette and smiled and nodded when the other party greeted him at the same time. Adam couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "Strange, why does this Lily look a little different from the Lily in our world?" Adam had seen Lily Evans, or Lily Potter, of the world they were in. At that time, the other person accompanied Harry like a ghost behind him, until the passive resistance spell on Harry followed Voldemort's spell. "Die and disappear," and that Lily and the Lily in front of me. Although the eye color and hair color are indeed the same, they feel like the person and ID photo of the same person. It can only be said that if you look closely, you can tell that they are the same person, but this saved Adam some effort. If the 2 Lilies looked exactly the same, he would have to find a way to adjust them. Professor Snape didn't know what Adam was thinking and continued to introduce, "This is my and Lily's daughter, Eileen Snape." "Eileen, it's not Harry." But it's true that Professor Snape was so confused that he gave his daughter this name. Adam smiled and nodded towards the little girl. At the same time, he searched in his memory and found the possible origin of this name, probably the name of Professor Snape's mother. Professor Snape did not explain to Adam why he named his daughter such a name for no reason, but said to Adam, "I know that I will return to this world this year, and I am afraid that there will be problems with Irene's identity. Irene is 10 years old this year, and she will be admitted to Hogwarts next year, but where is the book of admission? I'll take care of it." Adam understood that a little wizard might not have been known to anyone before, but after passing the age of school, it was impossible for him to appear out of thin air. It is true that the book of access with ancient magic will not be affected by ordinary spells, but it is not difficult for Adam to add a name to the book of access. "That's good, Professor." Snape sighed in relief as he nodded. Magic school is the starting point for young wizards to officially enter this society and come into contact with people. He doesn't want Eileen to fail to learn in the end, but in this case, "Professor Snape, you may not be promoted to the Dean of the Potion School next year, right?" Adam said to Professor Snape with a smile. "Originally, the Higher Education Department of Hogwarts will be completed next year, and the 4 deans of Hogwarts will be promoted accordingly. But Professor Snape will definitely not be willing to be promoted in this situation." Professor Snape couldn't help but smile and nodded. "Of course I want to stay and finish teaching Irene first, but in this case, it may not be so easy for you to become the Dean of the Potion School at that time. This is natural. The Potion School cannot wait for Professor Snape for 7 years for the Dean's position. It will naturally be Professor Slughorn, the second in command of the Potions Department. And as a Master of Potions, Professor Slughorn will not easily give up his position to Professor Snape." After saying that, Adam looked at Professor Snape and couldn't help sighing again. Oh my God. Whoever knows Professor Snape would be scared to death by the scene in front of him. Adam was sighing when he heard Professor Snape say to him, "I have some confidence in this, Professor." Snape looked at his family and said with a smile, "During my time there, I spent most of my time studying potions. I should be able to convince Professor Slughorn with my own potion skills." "Oh," Adam's eyes lit up. This was a pleasant surprise. With Professor Snape's personality, he would not have said such a thing without enough confidence. In other words, he thought that his current potion skills were able to crush Professor Slughorn. But think about it. It's not impossible, you know. Although Professor Snape is the youngest potion master, he actually put less energy into potion science than other potion masters at the same age. Whether it is spy work, the life of a Death Eater, or the inner struggle and regret later, it must have taken up a lot of Professor Snape's time and energy, not to mention that Professor Snape has basically never been idle since Harry entered school. Chapter 333, Alchemy no longer exists. Even though Professor Snape, whose time and energy were occupied by various things, still became the youngest potion master in the world, however, the one standing in front of Adam now was Professor Snape, who had lived a happy life and had a lot of time and energy to study potions on the basis of being a potion master. But even so, it stands to reason that Professor Snape could hardly be confident that he could crush Professor Slughorn, so that the other party would voluntarily give up the position of dean. After all, there is no first in literature and no second in martial arts, and Professor Slughorn also has to have face. You may have a deeper study in this direction, but I also have my own areas of expertise. As a potion master, why do you say that I am worse than you, unless— Adam's eyes were shining, and he looked at Professor Snape as if he was looking at a treasure mountain. You know, the simple part of potion learning is very simple, and it is really complicated when it becomes complicated, especially when it comes to the stage of potion master. What they need to study is far from being as simple as throwing several materials into the crucible in order and proportion, changing the heat, and stirring a few times. The complex process can be compared to an organic reaction. Adam himself has never done this, but in his previous life, he met a senior who was a teaching assistant for his tutor. Actually, he was teaching the tutor's elective course. The senior's daily job was to move bricks in the laboratory. Adam had a good relationship with him because he had picked up his campus card in the cafeteria. Because of this, Adam was able to glimpse some truths that he had never known before. Organic reactions in high school textbooks: A plus B generates organic reactions in the laboratory, dissolve it in the corresponding solvent C, and put it together with B dissolved in another solvent D, add catalyst O, ligand P, oxidant or reductant Q, and it is known that this reaction will generate E. So after the reaction has been going on for a period of time and the catalyst, ligand, etc. are removed, what is left in the reaction container? The answer is unreacted NB, main product E and byproduct F. Substances are 1B1 generated by various reactions such as oxidation and hydrolysis of A and B. New substances generated by the reaction between AB and are generated a 1B1. New substances decomposed from the unstable substances mentioned above. In addition, the above situation will change randomly with the difference of various subjective and objective factors such as temperature, pH value, solvent catalyst used, etc. The interference factors may even include the mood of the dog of the dormitory and downstairs during the experiment, and whether you have followed your oath to offer milk and bread to Liebig every day during the experiment. The meaningless laughter of the senior student in the circle of friends at 2 o'clock in the morning. The preparation of potions is also a similar process. The byproducts in ordinary potions can be basically ignored, and a pot of potion that can be drunk can be boiled in half an hour. But for those advanced potions, especially the top ones, there are many steps in the long cooking time to obtain effective potions and many steps to deal with harmful impurities. The changes are complex and delicate. Just like the elixir, if there is a mistake in the cooking process, it will become a pot of unknown effect, but with a high probability of being poisonous. You must know that potions are not organic chemistry after all. The effective or harmful ingredients in them are not real substances in the material world, but metaphysical magic. Physical means are not effective at all. Maybe he needs to find someone to talk to after moving too much bricks. The senior talked about a lot of chemical knowledge with Adam, who was very free during his hospitalization. Although the knowledge was not systematic, the operation was quite complete. Adam tried it with a little practical knowledge left in his memory, and gave up directly after finding that the knowledge was useless for potions. After all, his research on potions was mainly to brew longevity potions rather than really loving potion science. But after Professor Snape discussed it with Adam, he showed a very interested look. However, little Potter had more and more troubles at that time. Although Adam took away a lot of Harry's roles in the later period, Voldemort was resurrected in the later period. Professor Snape was so busy that 24 hours a day was not enough, and this interest remained just an interest. It was not until Voldemort's death that Professor Snape picked up this interest again, but it seems that there was no news of any results. Could it be that during this time in the parallel world, Professor Snape, seeing the change in Adam's eyes, Professor Snape raised his lips, a gentle smile appeared in his eyes, and nodded. When I was there, my own knowledge of potions was already shocking enough, so I spent more time on those Muggle theories you mentioned, chromatography, and finally succeeded in achieving some results and improved the brewing methods of some potions. As he spoke, Professor Snape took out a bottle of Felix Felicis from his pocket. The Felix Felicis brewed in a new way takes 1 month less than before. The success rate is greatly improved, and the side effects are also smaller than before. I think there's still room for improvement, my Merlin. Although he had already made a guess, Adam couldn't help but cover his forehead with his hand and took a breath of cold air when he really got Professor Snape's confirmation. Professor Snape, you are too modest. This is not a little result. If you just pull a potion professor over and repeat what Professor Snape said just now, the other party will definitely think that Professor Snape is crazy or that he is crazy, and he may even say something like potions no longer exist. You should know that according to the classic rhetoric of the previous life, it is not an exaggeration to call the Phylixir the jewel in the crown of potions. Its brewing method has been tempered by countless potion masters and is the best solution that cannot be changed. This is the case with Phylixir, let alone other potions. This is a groundbreaking creation for the entire potion science. While his mind was a little confused, Adam couldn't help but reflect on whether there was something wrong with his previous thinking before this. He paid more attention to those wizards who had made extraordinary achievements in magic, believing that they were the hope of leading the wizarding world to progress. But now it seems that compared with the professors who have studied Tiamat and Abzu and have not found anything until now, it seems that talents like Professor Snape in potion science are more, physical means are ineffective against the magic in potions. The so-called chromatography can only provide Professor Snape with an idea. It is impossible to separate the magic in the potion into any effective ingredients. What can be studied from it is entirely Professor Snape's own talent and ability. However, Adam then denied his own idea and could not be so arbitrary. Although spells and potions are based on magic, they can basically be considered as two different systems, and Professor Snape would not have achieved the current results without the time in the parallel world. But it is certain that Adam's previous ideas were missed, and his vision should be broader. Even relying on past geniuses is not enough. There may be wizards who can take a new path in the future. For example, Professor Longbottom, who is currently vaguely about to take the path of druids. At this moment, Adam is more determined to develop higher education for wizards. Chapter 334, The Unexpected Hero. Professor Snape, from now on, potion science will be rewritten because of you, Adam. Looked at Professor Snape and sighed. With Professor Snape's achievements, it is simply unreasonable not to hang a portrait of Professor Snape in the potion school. I just don't know if anyone will pay homage before the exam in the future. After all, the wizard's portrait can move and talk of, as long as you usually put even a little bit more knowledge into your brains. You don't need to put apples in front of my portrait now. Oh, I almost forgot. Professor Snape probably won't be so irritable now. Adam blinked, as if to deepen his memory of the gentle Professor Snape in front of him at this moment. Eileen on the side couldn't help but said, "My father is already the most powerful potion master in the world, and he even won the first-class medal of Sir Merlin." Oh, Adam was a little surprised, but then he felt relieved. The Order of Merlin was somewhat similar to the Nobel Prize for Wizards, and there were no categories. It could be awarded as long as there were certain achievements. Of course, some of them are obtained by relying on connections or spending money instead of achievements, but to put it another way, there are no categories for the Merlin Order anyway, so how can having such connections and financial resources not be regarded as a different kind of achievement? In any case, just like the Nobel Prize has been crooked for so many years but is still famous, although there are many parallel winners of the Merlin medal, it is still a very high honor in the eyes of the wizarding public. Adam couldn't help but look at Professor Snape with a smile. It seems that we should also give Professor Snape a Merlin first-class medal. Although these words were said in a joking tone, they were also serious. Adam could naturally resolve such a trivial matter as awarding the Order of Merlin with one word, and even considering Professor Snape's genuine achievements, there was no need to go through the back door. Professor Snape smiled and shook his head. "That's not all." Eileen was very serious and started counting her father's losses on her fingers. "My father also won a first-class medal when he eliminated Voldemort. He is a great hero. And he is also the principal of Hogwarts." Adam looked at Professor Snape even more surprised, and at the same time he couldn't help laughing. I'm afraid it's a bit difficult. It's easy to issue another medal of Merlin. There is no second Voldemort in this world for your father to eliminate, but the headmaster of Hogwarts is not impossible. Ahem. Professor Reed is joking, Professor. Snape couldn't help but put his fist to his mouth and coughed. After all, although Voldemort in this world died at the hands of Professor Dumbledore, and the subsequent Death Eaters were cleaned up by Eugene and others, there seemed to be no figure of Adam among them. But what exactly Adam did, if Eugene and his roommates know the most, then closely followed are Professor Dumbledore and Professor Snape. In the eyes of these insiders, there is actually no big problem in saying that Voldemort died in Adam's hands, not to mention that as the principal of Hogwarts, Adam's contributions and changes to Hogwarts are completely unmatched by Professor Snape's time as principal. Professor Snape can't even pay for the money Adam spends every day. Professor Snape takes office as principal today, And tomorrow the funding chain of Hogwarts will be broken. Therefore, what Aaron was bragging about in front of Adam now made Professor Snape feel a wave of embarrassment. Professor Snape reached out and touched the back of Eileen's head, attracting a confused look from his daughter. Seeing that Professor Snape was in embarrassment, Lily quickly put down the hand covering her smile and put her daughter into her arms to calm her down. Eileen didn't know many things because of her young age. But Professor Snape naturally didn't hide anything about the world from Lily. Adam didn't want to undermine him in front of Professor Snape's daughter. He conjured up some desserts for them to sit aside and taste. Then he turned to Professor Snape and asked, "The hero who destroyed Voldemort? Professor Snape, this is not like your style. It can even be said that this is not Slytherin." It did not surprise Adam that Professor Snape could do this. After all, as an absolute core member of the Order of the Phoenix, Professor Snape knew the true whereabouts of all Horcruxes. But there is absolutely no need for Professor Snape to do this, right? With his ability, he could just find a place to hide and wait for Voldemort to be killed by Professor Dumbledore. If he couldn't, just reveal the information about the Horcrux to Professor Dumbledore. Why take the risk himself? Although Professor Snape's character has changed somewhat, Adam does not think that Professor Snape will become a person who is keen on being famous. It is even more inconsistent with Professor Snape to risk the lives of himself and his wife and children in order to save the wizarding world. Character. About this matter, it was actually an accident. When Professor Snape talked about this, the smile on his face disappeared and was replaced by seriousness and a bit of confusion. Because I was with Lily in that world, I didn't join the Death Eaters at all, and I didn't plan to join the Order of the Phoenix, but Voldemort was eyeing me. Voldemort is targeting you. Adam frowned. Is it because you are half-blood and your wife is Muggle-born? Or is it because you are a potions master? No, probably both. If you think about it, the possibility is actually quite high. It is impossible for Professor Snape's achievements and potions to be exposed all at once. That would be too absurd. He must have revealed them bit by bit. Perhaps Professor Snape announced his epic-making achievements after destroying Voldemort, but before that, he must have been a potion master. Voldemort advocated the supremacy of pure blood, which was more talented than half-bloods and mudbloods. As a result, the youngest potion master of half-blood stood there, which was like a slap in his face in this case. It is understandable that Voldemort would target Professor Snape and have the idea of either recruiting him or killing him. I had this idea at first, but Voldemort was chasing us with the intention of killing us directly. I only saw this once when I was under his command. Professor Snape's face flashed a familiar gloom to Adam. Adam knew which time he was talking about indeed. Although Voldemort kills people, except when he directly casts the killing curse during battle, in situations like this where he takes the initiative to come to someone's door, he often likes to torture the person before killing them. This kind of direct approach to the person's door without saying a word has only happened once to Voldemort, and that was when he went to kill the Potter family. So, you suspect, in the prophecy that Voldemort got in the parallel world, the person who killed him was you. Chapter 335 Experimental Treatment. I'm not entirely sure, Professor. Snape squinted his eyes and recalled, because Lily and I were far away from the center of the fight before that. Of course I can't eavesdrop on any prophecies this time. Adam nodded. In this case, apart from asking the person involved, the only way to know the prophecy is probably the prophecy hall of the Department of Mysteries. Professor Trelawney has no idea what prophecies she made. Professor Dumbledore always speaks mysteriously and without giving details. As for the Department of Mysteries, Professor Snape shook his head. Although it was so easy for Voldemort to break into the Department of Mysteries, it is really not that easy to get in through formal channels. The main purpose is to guard against gentlemen and not against villains. Adam frowned when he heard this and shook his head. No, there is another person involved, besides. Professor Snape looked at Adam suspiciously, and saw Adam looking at him inexplicably. Professor Snape, if there were no other parties involved, how did Voldemort know about this prophecy? Professor Snape, indeed, there is another party that he has ignored, and that is the informant in the parallel world, which is the role he himself played in the past of this world. If the prophecy that Voldemort received was really that Professor Snape would kill him, then this informer must exist, and if the reason why Voldemort targeted Professor Snape was not the prophecy, both of them knew that the possibility was very low, especially Professor Snape, who should be considered one of the people who knew Voldemort best. Looking at Professor Snape with a strange expression, Adam blinked. Is this considered dark under the light? From another angle, ignore Voldemort's problem, he has been dealt with anyway. Adam waved his hand and ignored the topic, chatted with Professor Snape for a while and then let them leave. When they first arrived in this world, Lily and Aline also needed some time to adapt to the differences between the two worlds. Professor Snape also needed to adapt. After all, the day after tomorrow was Monday, and he had to teach students. After Professor Snape and his family left, Adam immediately took out a crystal ball and controlled it, and got a prophecy from it, a prophecy that had indeed changed. Interesting. Adam looked blankly at the void in the distance, but silently put this incident on the list to be studied. He hadn't thought so much when he sent Professor Snape to the parallel world. At least he hadn't thought that Professor Snape would replace Harry and become the savior, because the prophecy did not actually point to Harry. There were only 2 children who fulfilled the prophecy. It stands to reason that even without Harry, it would be perfectly fine for the prophecy to point to Neville. Besides, old Potter is not without it. If you marry Lily, you will definitely not get married and have children. If the prophecy at that time determined the final outcome of Voldemort's defeat, then it should not be important at all whether the savior is the Harry born by old Potter and Lily. The prophecy is not necessary and should not be done when the prophecy still points to something. Change occurs, but it turns out that the prophecy changed precisely because of Professor Snape. It's a pity that there are too many variables in this. Otherwise, we can control the variables and study this prophecy. Adam narrowed his eyes. If Harry was still the same Harry, but Professor Snape stopped helping him, would the prophecy also change? Does the identity of the savior determine the content of the prophecy, or does the prophecy determine who the savior is, or did both work together to finally form that prophecy? The world is a huge second-order chaotic system. There is no absolutely certain law of cause and effect. That is, a certain cause will inevitably lead to a certain effect, and the lack of a certain cause will inevitably not cause a certain effect. Adam's fingers tapped on the desk in front of him that had returned to its original state. The law of cause and effect is a power that is controversial at the philosophical level. Can we get a glimpse of it through prophecy at the magical level? At least among the rules of the world that Adam currently knows, there is no rule called cause and effect. However, this kind of profound proposition can be studied slowly in the future. At present, Adam has no need to use such metaphysical power as the law of causality things to do now. Adam re-examined his memo. He needed to do some work for the release of the movie. In addition, the effect of soul healing on people other than Anne should also be experimented. Although there is one successful case, it is actually only one case. The treatment of the soul is still in the experimental stage. Whether to accept treatment, Adam stood in front of Neville and Mrs. Longbottom and stated his interests. We accept it. Neville, who is already very tall and strong, his eyes gleaming, immediately accepted the treatment plan proposed by Adam. Mrs. Longbottom looked at her grandson with satisfaction. Since the parent-teacher conference at Hogwarts, she had truly felt the changes in her grandson, and she also recognized that Neville could be the master of the Longbottom family. Okay, then, let's discharge Mr. and Mrs. Longbottom. Hogwarts will arrange a ward for the 2 of them. Isn't this not good? Neville looked at Adam in surprise. This was not because he doubted Adam's ability to make this decision on behalf of Hogwarts. For those of them who have deep connections with the upper echelons of Hogwarts, everyone can vaguely guess the true identity of Professor Gandalf from various channels, and Neville, who was carefully taught by Professor Grindelwald and Professor Sprout, is of course no exception. The main reason is that Hogwarts's position has always been neutral, and even according to the popular 9-square grid, it is absolutely neutral, but now it is opening a back door for a professor. It doesn't matter. The Longbottoms entered Hogwarts in the name of experimental treatment. Adam gave Neville a comforting smile. The treatment of soul injuries is currently among the most important research projects in Hogwarts, and it also requires patients who have a trusting basis for Hogwarts. In fact, Hogwarts currently has few projects that can be shown off. The only fruitful one is Professor Snape's potion research results, which cannot be shown all at once, so Adam had to use his own research results to support the facade first. Otherwise, when the Ministry of Higher Education is established next year, there must be some results to prove the importance and necessity of higher education and specialized research. Right, obviously, the results Adam brought out to show off were very powerful, and Neville and Mrs. Longbottom had no doubts at all. Soul injuries had no treatment in the wizarding world before. If such research was not important, then what research could be called important? Chapter 336. A little surprise. Hiss, this is unexpected. After Solving the transfer of the Longbottoms and arranging a preliminary treatment plan for them, Adam set off to start the work of facilitating the release of the movie. At the top of the list is of course the protagonists throughout the entire series of movies, the Gryffindor trio, who are currently working in the Ministry of Magic. However, Adam did not expect that there would be a problem in this first step. This problem did not lie with Harry. After reading the outline of the series of movies, he was still very satisfied with his role. The problem was with Hermione and Ron. It's not that the two of them simply refused to appear in the movie, but that the two of them have now broken up. After hearing the news from the embarrassed Hermione, Adam became the embarrassed person, so much so that he didn't even say anything about the movie. His first reaction to the news was, how could they break up? Then he reacted, why can't they break up? Snow White and the prince lived happily together. It was just the end of the fairy tale, but not the end of everything. Who knows if the queen who persecuted her and the king who was killed by the queen were not another pair of princesses and princes who lived happily together. P.S. Snow White's stepmother was her biological mother in the original manuscript of the Grimm brothers, but perhaps because this setting was not fairy tale enough, it was finally changed to stepmother. Rubbing his forehead with a headache, Adam then went to find out what the specific situation was. Don't get me wrong, he didn't have any thoughts like you two must be together, and even if you break up, you can get back together with me. He just wanted to have a good time. After hearing the news, because this topic was not very convenient to talk about, Adam used the method of reading memory. After reading the memories of many people related to this matter, including Hermione and Ron themselves, he finally sorted out the cause and effect of the matter. Hermione and Ron's relationship was still very stable until they graduated, but a little accident happened after graduation. At first, it was a problem that every Hogwarts graduate had to consider, that is, employment. Hermione naturally chose the Ministry of Magic, which she had decided long ago, but Ron did not choose to enter the Ministry of Magic, but worked as a clerk in a store that sold magic items such as invisibility cloaks. At this point in the story, Ron and Hermione still had a good relationship. At most, Ron was a little dissatisfied with Hermione's excessive career ambition, because the Ministry of Magic was in need of people at that time, and Hermione was often busy until late at night before going home. The turning point of the story happened not long after. The store where Ron worked went bankrupt, and the manager chose to sell the store and run away under the dual effects of declining sales and dangerous environment. Well, the person who took over the store was Adam. Of course, Ron, as an ordinary clerk, did not know about this. Adam smacked his lips when he thought of this. How could he have anything to do with it? Ron, who had become an unemployed vagrant, naturally had to look for a new job. However, the employment environment at that time was not good. Adam had already launched a price war in the entire British wizarding market, and the attack rigots also showed that the wizarding world seemed to be in turmoil again. It was not impossible for Ron to wait for the situation to change at home. Their family conditions were far from being starving to death if one person went out to work. Hermione's salary alone was enough for the two of them to live a well-off life, but Ron obviously couldn't accept that he had to rely on his girlfriend to support him. After some searching, under the combined effect of various subjective and objective factors, Ron chose the only relatively stable and lucrative job within his options, a staff member of the Ministry of Magic. Ron originally wanted to apply for an Auror, but the current Auror requirements are relatively high. In addition to practical ability, good tactical literacy is also required. Entry requires passing a special assessment, and the assessment time is fixed at the Hogwarts graduation season every year, so Ron can only work as an ordinary staff member. First, as luck would have it, he was assigned to Hermione's group as soon as he joined the job. What's worse is that because of Hermione's positive work attitude and good work ability, she has been promoted to team leader. In other words, Ron became Hermione's subordinate after joining the company. You should know that the biggest taboo of office romance is to fall in love with your direct superior. Because even if the relationship between you two is a simple relationship and a superior-subordinate relationship, your colleagues will not think so. After a series of common bloody plots such as rumors, ineffective defenses, couple conflicts, are you satisfied with this? Don't be unreasonable. Hermione and Ron broke up. Adam also felt helpless about this, and at the same time realized that the love between Hermione and Ron was far less solid than in the original book. Because of the lack of the process of sharing hardships in the original book in this way, the plot of the two of them together in the movie is a bit awkward. After thinking for a long time, Adam decided to give up thinking, go directly to the two, tell the truth about the movie, and throw the problem to the two. The result was somewhat beyond his expectations. Hermione and Ron actually both recognized a part of the outline that belonged to them. Although We have broken up now. I will not deny my past. We were indeed lovers during our time at Hogwarts. Hermione closed the outline and handed it back to Adam. Although she was a little emotional, her expression was generally calm. The first lesson Professor Grindelwald teaches us is to recognize and accept ourselves. Adam? Question mark. Recognize and accept yourself? Professor Grindelwald, what did you teach them? Ron responded in a similar way. Although the reason was not as clear as Hermione's, he generally did not regret or deny his choice no matter what. The result is still beneficial to the release of the movie, and Adam has no idea of overly interfering in their future. It can only depend on what they think. Maybe the movie will bring some changes to their future. After settling on the trio, Adam visited one by one along the list, and basically everyone readily agreed. For them, appearing in this semi-realistic movie seemed to be just a fun thing. Of course, a few people said they wanted to think about it, or suggested whether their roles could be slightly modified. Adam also dealt with this as appropriate, and there was really nothing wrong with some requests. For example, a witch who greeted Harry when he first arrived at the Leaky Cauldron expressed that she wanted to dress more formally that day in the movie. She didn't even take care of her hair when she went out that day. This is completely acceptable. It's just a matter of the transformation spell. As for the outrageous request, of course I rejected it outright, and the remaining characters didn't have to be anyone. Everything was ready, and the publicity was rolled out along with Adam's actions, and the premiere day of the movie soon arrived. Chapter 337 at a number 039, S.O.K. Harry, this life will pass quickly. It seems that everyone is very interested in this movie. Adam looked at the huge customer flow at Fantasy Cinema with satisfaction. Speaking of which, his previous walk was actually a disguised advertisement for the movie. After knowing that he would appear in the movie, it was difficult for the wizards not to mention it to their neighbors, relatives and friends. Adam's eyes fell on an acquaintance in the distance. Mr. Minister, are you coming to watch a movie too? Yeah, today happens to be the weekend. Huh? Eugene turned around and saw Adam, his brows suddenly raised. Why do you suddenly call me Mr. Minister? I would rather you call me who is a serious person who has meetings early in the morning. Adam shrugged. This is a kind of fun, similar to Guess Who I Am. Okay, let's not talk about that. I heard about the movie. Why doesn't it seem like I have a role, too? Be precise, there is no us role, eh? Familiar voice sounded, and Adam turned his head. Bernard was standing behind him. Do you actually have double holidays at work? Of course, the current laws in the British wizarding world advocate that everyone is equal. Bernard smiled slightly. Of course, if employees voluntarily work overtime, that's another matter. Adam blinked and asked tentatively, is it paid? Eugene smiled slightly. Haha, if it's paid, is it still called voluntary? That's called inducing employees to work overtime. Hiss. Adam couldn't help but gasped. Eugene, who turned you into this? Is it Bernard? Why are you reacting so violently? Aren't you the biggest capitalist in the British wizarding world now? Adam blinked and breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Let's go. It's time to check in and enter. Oh, by the way, don't change the subject. Why is it that a movie that started when we entered school and is said to be adapted from reality doesn't have us in it? Following Adam towards the special passage, Bernard grabbed Adam and asked, that's why it's called adapted from reality. The reality adaptation you're talking about means changing our scenes to others, right? Of course it also needs some modification, otherwise, think about it, can our scenes be broadcast? This, Bernard was stunned. As if this was indeed the case, Adam glanced at the number above. Oh, I'm here. Which hall is your location in? Huh? We haven't bought the tickets yet. Bernard blinked, looking innocent. Eugene also looked at Adam with an innocent face. Bernard. Sure enough, you were the one who led Eugene into trouble. However, now that they had turned around and queued up to buy tickets, they would not be able to catch the first show, so Adam had to take them to the screening room. Wow. The view here is better, Bernard. And Eugene looked at the spacious environment around them and couldn't help but their eyes lit up. Of course, this is not only the best place to watch a movie, but it also has a panoramic view of everything going on in the audience. Adam showed a slightly subtle smile. Okay, the movie is about to start. Everyone, please sit down. Do you want popcorn and Coke? Yes. X2. There were a few minutes of advertisements before the movie started. Of course, they were all advertisements for Adam's industry. and then a pink-purple bubble flooded the screen from bottom to top, revealing the Dream Cinema logo, signaling that the movie was about to start. Huh? Did I see it wrong? Bernard's eyes that glanced around stopped at one position. That's Professor Dumbledore. Normal. There are no classes at Hogwarts this weekend. Adam followed Bernard's finger and looked there and then looked away. Stop talking. The movie has started. In the silence, the film's perspective slowly moved down from the sky and landed on a street sign. Privet Drive. Almost all wizards knew nothing about this address. Only Harry, who was among the crowd, couldn't help but widen his eyes. Does the movie actually start at his aunt's house? He did know in advance that he was the protagonist, but he had only read the general outline. Of course, it was impossible to spoil the specific storyline, so his heartbeat had already begun to accelerate at this time. Does this story start too early? His experience at his aunt's house didn't need to be made into a movie. However, the camera turned to a forest, or to be precise, it was an old man walking out of the woods. Professor Dumbledore. It can be said that 99% of all the wizards present graduated from Hogwarts. When they were studying at Hogwarts, Professor Dumbledore was either the principal or the professor of transfiguration. Of course they knew this person. Who is the old man? Professor Dumbledore slowly moved forward with a calm expression, passing by a beautiful short tabby cat with a special facial pattern. I didn't expect that the beginning of the movie would actually be this period of time in the past. Professor McGonagall couldn't help but take a deep breath. Memories of the past came to her mind, making the scene in front of her blurry. Yeah, it seems like it was yesterday that day we handed Harry over to his family. Professor Dumbledore sighed after the two of them finished speaking. On the other side of Professor Dumbledore, Professor Grindelwald snorted coldly, his nose not his nose, his eyes not his eyes. The wizards whispered to each other. They really had never known about the history of the boy who survived. The plot slowly progressed. As Hagrid arrived with little Harry, they put little Harry at the door. The bright environment in a blink of an eye hinted at the passing of time. However, the following plot made the wizards present silent one by one. How dare they? Finally, when they reached the transition point, a witch couldn't help but exclaimed. Harry's family had oppressed Harry too much just now, and they were shocked in their hearts, so they didn't dare to speak. They are really bad as expected. Ron, who was sitting next to Harry, couldn't help but complain as someone who had driven to pick up Harry with Fred and George. Ron, or the Weasley family, was one of the few wizards who knew about Harry's living conditions at his aunt's house. Don't say it, don't say it. Harry, who was afraid of being recognized, couldn't help but cover his face with his hands and shook Ron's arm. If everyone looked at him with admiration, he would be troubled but happy. But if everyone looked at him with pity, that's unnecessary. Fortunately, the next scene satisfied Harry's thoughts, and everyone probably wouldn't look at him with pity. Is that Parseltongue? Seeing Harry actually talking to a python, the wizards were once again in an uproar. Harry's Parseltongue was not exposed to too many people before because Adam had cleared the Chamber of Secrets in advance, so now Harry couldn't help but blacken his eyes after Ron explained what Parseltongue was. It's okay, Harry. Adam, who saw this scene in the screening room, couldn't help but curl his lips. This life will pass quickly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338. What a wonderful campus life. What, Bernard? And Eugene looked at Adam. Oh, nothing. Keep watching. The movie has just begun. Adam still had a smile on his face, and continued to watch the reactions of acquaintances in the theaters. As for why Adam's attention was not on the movie, joke, how could he not know the plot of the movie? The most interesting thing now is of course the reaction of the audience, especially those who are immersive. Less than 10 minutes into the movie, Harry was numb. However, the movie was still going on, and the wizards had to suppress their ideas temporarily, and Harry slowly recovered. Seeing the owl delivering letters to him, Harry remembered what the next plot was. Looking at the door being slammed heavily in the rainy night like a horror movie, the wizards around couldn't help but get nervous, but Harry couldn't help but smile. That was the turning point of his life. It was also the first time he felt the warmth from others. Hagrid, who was taller than the door, broke in directly. Under the illumination of thunder, Hagrid, who was shrouded in shadow, frightened several witches and made them scream. But the next moment, Hagrid sincerely apologized to everyone inside the door. and the scene made them stunned. The following plot changed their views on the tall Hagrid, especially when they saw the ugly and slightly crushed cake. Oh, the witches who were scared and screamed just now covered their hearts with their hands. What was the difference between the weak and pitiful Harry holding the cake and the little kitten huddled in a cardboard box on a rainy night? It's a pity that Hagrid didn't come, Harry sighed. He had invited Hagrid, but the weekend was the time when Hagrid delivered food to Grop. That was the most delicious cake I have ever eaten in my life. I think it's good that he's not here. Harry looked at Ron, who said this in confusion. Ron pouted at him. If he was here, I'm afraid we would only hear his crying here now. As soon as these words came out, Harry had pictures in his mind, and even sounds. He couldn't help shaking his head to get rid of these things. Okay, you're right, then. Watched a movie for a while, Harry couldn't help but frown. Wait, it didn't seem to be like that at the time. Huh? Ron looked at Harry and heard him say, I remember it very clearly. At that time, Dudley stole my birthday cake and Hagrid turned him into a pig's tail. Ahem. Ron interrupted him quickly and said in a low voice, then it's right to modify this paragraph. That's a curse on Muggles, and it's a vicious curse. You don't want Hagrid to be arrested and sent to Azkaban, do you? Harry blinked. I remembered it wrong, too. Say that the current Azkaban is even more of a nightclub than in the past. It's not that Azkaban has a bad reputation. On the contrary, Azkaban now only detains people for one day, and anyone who has been there will praise Azkaban after coming out, a prison that is well known among criminals. Can you imagine how terrible it is? It's really terrifying to think about it. Wait. Hagrid is not the only one who has done illegal things. Thinking of this, Harry suddenly felt as if his butt had turned into a bed of needles. He wanted to stand up but was afraid of being too conspicuous. It would be great if Hermione was here. Harry couldn't help but secretly said that if Hermione was here, he would have some confidence by asking Hermione, but he just said this in his mind. He knew that Hermione also came to watch the movie today, but obviously she didn't buy the same ticket as them, and she might not even be in this theater while Harry was fidgeting. Hagrid opened the door called Magic for Harry and took him to Diagon Alley to buy the items he needed for school. Seeing this, the atmosphere obviously relaxed, and the wizards laughed and whispered with their companions. For Muggles, this section may show the wonders of the wizarding world, but for wizards, this section is a memory. They used to buy the things they needed to go to Hogwarts in the same place. Oh, by the way, most of those shops seem to be gone now. Adam in the screening room couldn't help but cough twice, attracting the suspicious eyes of Eugene and Bernard. With Adam's physique that has never been seen sick in so many years, this state, is he guilty? Is he guilty? What did he do? The two couldn't help but raise a little vigilance in their hearts. They looked at the popcorn and Coke at hand, and moved their hands more carefully, fearing that they would eat something with a strange taste. Oh, with a nostalgic sigh, Ron looked at their family in the movie and smiled. I didn't expect that the process of my first visit to Hogwarts was also in the movie, and it started from the time I passed through platform 9 3/4. Even Fred and George's pranks were included. Well, after all, it was you who took me through platform 9 3/4, Harry also showed a nostalgic smile. Fred and George in other screening rooms also smiled. They couldn't help but high-five each other when they saw their own pranks. Adam's eyes could not help but soften for a moment. After all, according to the research of the textual research party in the previous life, Mrs. Molly took the initiative to cooperate with the two people's prank, because the names of the two people were clearly posted on the luggage. But the next moment, Adam couldn't help laughing. Laugh. Enjoy the beauty of the present. After all, his Yam state map is very long. As if thinking of something happy, Adam's smile became brighter. In the screening room, Eugene and Bernard next to him only felt a chill on their backs, and completely gave up eating the food on the table, and turned their attention to the movie in front. The movie was promoted as a story about a boy who survived a disaster and constantly thwarted Voldemort's conspiracy and finally defeated Voldemort completely. And they still remember those unclear extra points back then. Obviously, the story of this year should not have changed much. Harry thwarted Voldemort's conspiracy before the extra points, so the main scene of the story is naturally Hogwarts. As the story progresses, everyone follows Harry to Hogwarts, experiences the familiar sorting ceremony, and meets the Hogwarts professors who are familiar or unfamiliar. What a wonderful campus life, eh? Wizard couldn't help but sigh, as if the movie brought back memories of the school, and the wizards around him couldn't help but agree. What a wonderful campus life, Harry And Ron sighed with bitter faces while making the same sigh at that time. They thought the professors assigned too much homework, but compared with later, there's really no comparison, no harm. Chapter 339, Say One Thing and Mean Another, Albus. On the big screen, a group of young wizards at Hogwarts were screaming and panicking because of the troll that Professor Quirrell mentioned. The camera faithfully recorded the performance of several major characters. Harry and Ron both raised their hands and slapped their foreheads, making a loud sound, while also covering their eyes. Fortunately, everyone around was laughing at this time, and some people were asking their companions in a low voice if this was true, but no one noticed the movement on their side at the same time. In another screening room, Draco, who was watching a movie with his parents, also quietly broke into pieces. Lucius looked with disapproval at his son, who was covering his face with his hands and seemed to be asleep. He didn't say anything here because of his face, but Narcissa smiled happily. Speaking of which, since my son has grown up, although he has become more mature, he is no longer as cute as before. Narcissa sighed secretly. It was a pity that the theater did not allow photography. It would be great if the scene just now could be captured. That makes sense. Adam looked away, rubbed his chin and muttered, and then decided to buy some movie peripherals, such as postcards of famous scenes, or make some dynamic cards like the chocolate frog card. You can randomly select one for any purchase at Fantasy Cinema. There is a complete set, and there are a few fixed limited editions. This routine seems a bit familiar, Adam thought for a moment, snapped his fingers, and suddenly there was a package of crispy noodles in his hand. It turned out to be the pit he stepped on when he was a child in his previous life. The plot of the movie is still advancing. The trio officially took shape after a heroic rescue in the bathroom, and the plot moved towards the Quidditch match with laughter. Oh, my bloody mother, hell! Ron rubbed his face. How on earth did Adam know those things? I'm also very curious. He even knows what happened before I entered Hogwarts. Harry also looked in disbelief. That's not what I meant. Forget it, it doesn't matter. The question is what to do next. Ron spread his index and middle fingers apart to reveal his eyes. Do you remember what happened after that? Of course, that was my first official Quidditch game. How could I not remember it? With a smile on his face, Harry replied in a low voice, that time I finally caught a golden snitch. Well, maybe I should say bit it. What about the process? Process? Oh, I remembered it. I remember that during that game, Professor Quirrell cursed my broom, and as a result, we hissed. The smile on Harry's face faded. By the way, I still owe Professor Snape an apology. When Hermione saw this, she also remembered the past. Later, after Harry was brought out by Professor Dumbledore, he went directly to the hospital wing. She also ignored that the mastermind behind the scenes was Quirrell and not Professor Snape. So she was like this at that time. It's a bit unethical to do it with one hand. Thinking about it now, she was indeed too preconceived at the time and should have taken a closer look. If she could have noticed that Quirrell was also chanting the spell at that time, she would never have been misled at the beginning, and then went further and further down the wrong path of investigating Professor Snape, which finally led to Harry's death after the potion level. He ran into the real mastermind, Professor Quirrell, without any preparation. Looking at Professor Snape, whose robe was set on fire in the movie, Hermione pinched her eyebrows and thought about going to the clothing store in Hogsmeade to buy a new robe for Professor Snape after the movie apologized. Regardless of the mood of the several parties involved at this moment, the wizards could not help but suspect that they had fallen in love with Professor Snape in the movie with Harry as the main perspective. But this is too different from reality, right? But it's just a movie after all. As the movie continues amid viewers' confusion, Harry receives an invisibility cloak for Christmas, which allows Harry, who has not received any additional magical inheritance, to unlock a copy of Night Journey. When Harry was almost caught by Professor Snape, the wizards who had experienced night travel during their student days held their breath in sympathy, and the Mirror of Ares that Harry encountered also amazed many wizards. That's Lily and James. I remember what they looked like. A wizard who seemed to have known Harry's parents exclaimed in a low voice after seeing the figure in the mirror. Does that magic mirror really exist? Can it reflect what you want in your heart? Who knows? It's probably true. After all, who can say that they have seen all the secrets of Hogwarts? I wouldn't be surprised at all if there is such a magic mirror in Hogwarts. A wizard's speech attracted unanimous approval from everyone. Hogwarts has stood in the Scottish Highlands for thousands of years. Countless legendary wizards have come here and returned here. Maybe one of the wizards placed such a magic mirror in a corner of Hogwarts. When Harry asked Professor Dumbledore what he saw in the mirror of Eris, many wizards pricked up their ears for gossip. After all, children's desires are actually quite simple. Harry wants to meet his parents, Ron wants to be a prefect and Quidditch captain, etc. But adults are different. However, to their disappointment, Professor Dumbledore actually said that what he saw were wool socks. You're lying to children. A wizard who was expecting to see Professor Dumbledore expressed his disgust for Professor Dumbledore's behavior, but maybe this is true. Another wizard, who was probably a fan of Professor Dumbledore, couldn't help but defend his idol. Professor Dumbledore has already achieved success and fame. If he wanted to join the Ministry of Magic, he could have become the minister that year. Maybe he really has no other desires, so he only wants a pair of wool socks in winter. Another wizard didn't respond to his words, but obviously sneered at his statement. How can people have no desires? The wizard who refuted was very angry, but it was quite outrageous that Professor Dumbledore actually had fans. Adam couldn't help but take a closer look and found some clues. Nymphadora? It turned out to be a member of the Order of the Phoenix. That's fine, almost. Everyone in the Order of the Phoenix is a fan of Professor Dumbledore. It's just that these fans' understanding of Professor Dumbledore is obviously superficial. This kind of thing still depends on the person involved. Adam's eyes fell on the screening room where Professor Dumbledore was. Professor Dumbledore remained calm in the face of Professor Grindelwald's probing gaze. Seeing that Dumbledore pretended not to see him, Professor Grindelwald sat up and asked in a low voice, "So, what you saw in the mirror was really wool socks? The mirror of Eris is just a mirror for truly happy people, Gellert, Professor." Dumbledore spoke calmly. Professor Grindelwald chuckled a few times. "You say one thing and mean another, Albus." Dumbledore was not a truly happy person. Before Adam brought Ariana back, he was sure that what Dumbledore saw in the mirror of Eris must have been Ariana's figure, but Dumbledore lied now. Why did he lie? Professor Grindelwald narrowed his eyes in satisfaction and sat back. Chapter 340. Everyone is happy, but everyone has their own thoughts. Discovering that Grindelwald's state was different from what he had imagined, Professor Dumbledore frowned, and then realized where he had exposed his flaws. However, it was useless to make up for it at this moment, so Professor Dumbledore had to continue watching the movie. On the other side of Professor Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall felt a little uneasy. This movie was not really friendly to her. At the beginning, she felt a little regretful when she saw Harry's life at his aunt's house. She shouldn't have left Harry there and never went to see him again. The plot in which Harry's broom was disturbed later brought back her memories. She only knew the truth afterwards, so she couldn't help but regret that if she had taken Harry's words more seriously at the time, they wouldn't have to go through the level by themselves, and Harry wouldn't have to face Professor Quirrell alone. The most outrageous thing is that now these two old men who are more than 50 years older than her are actually showing off next to her, a widow who has lost her husband. It's so cold, considering that it is not easy for Professor Dumbledore to bloom after being over 100 years old. Professor McGonagall took a few deep breaths and reluctantly put all her attention back on the movie. Adam on the other side was watching this scene in amazement. No. The production process of the movie needs to be accelerated. If the employees are fully efficient, one movie can be produced in about 2 weeks, and the 8 movies will be released just in time for the Chinese New Year. As for the New Year movie, it has been decided to be Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Adam is really looking forward to Professor Grindelwald seeing Professor Dumbledore's image in the mirror and reliving that past tense. Ha. Eugene and Bernard's Adam alarms reacted again. They glanced at Adam, who was smiling for some reason, and secretly decided not to sit with Adam next time. This is too scary. We were obviously following Adam to investigate Nicholas Flamel during this period. Ron couldn't help but speak when he saw himself looking for information in the library in the movie. Yes, and Adam's store has become famous at this time. Why didn't it appear in the movie? Harry touched his chin and analyzed. Could it be that Adam doesn't appear in this movie at all? Ron was a little confused. If Adam doesn't appear himself, why does Adam make this movie? Maybe this is the theme of this movie? How can Hogwarts without Adam defeat Voldemort's conspiracy? Harry's eyes lit up. Yes, he is the protagonist. Adam laughed at this. Yes, you can be the protagonist, and you will be silent once you are the protagonist. Once upon a time, many fans who were attracted by the first few movies and naively thought it was just a fairy tale were stabbed to death by the sudden serial knives in the later movies. I really don't know whether it is better to give everyone enough time to brew emotions before stabbing, or to let everyone watch the whole series at the end of the year and eat the knife, but he really can't wait to see everyone being stabbed Adam's side. This is called the dilemma of life. However, the magical magic in the movie is mostly commonplace to everyone, and naturally it is faster to accept than ordinary people in the previous life. If it is really kept for too long, it may not have a very good effect. Having decided to watch the show quickly, Adam can only comfort himself in this way. The climax of the movie came soon. In order to protect the Philosopher's Stone, 3 young wizards who had just entered school and had not learned much magic relied on their wisdom and courage to break through layers of levels and finally came to the last level. Oh my God, they did a great job, eh? Witch exclaimed emotionally. She would never be able to do such a thing at the same age, but the next moment she widened her eyes in shock. Ah, that is, the one who appeared at the last level was not Professor Snape as everyone thought before, but Professor Quirrell, who had always been timid and like a waste before. Harry in the movie obviously has the same doubts as everyone else, and perhaps because he has been suppressed for too long, Professor Quirrell generously tells his conspiracy and ridicules Harry, who suspects Professor Snape. Wizards in the screening room, hardened, fists hardened. Is this mocking Harry in the movie? It's mocking them. Fortunately, this is not the first time everyone has watched a movie. When the movie first came out, there were really wizards who pulled out their wands because of the plot. However, the wizards present didn't have time to pay attention to Professor Quirrell's ridicule, because the voice of a third person sounded on the scene, and Professor Quirrell also took off his turban, Merlin, because all the screening rooms were showing the same movie and the time was not staggered. The entire cinema fell into dead silence at this moment. Lucius couldn't help but clench the armrest tightly, his face pale. He never knew that Voldemort had entered Hogwarts so long ago, and was possessed by a professor, so close to his son. Although the other wizards were in a different mood from Lucius, they were also shocked by the scene, too. Blasphemous, eh? Wizard murmured in a trembling voice. That's right. At this moment, the wizard who saw the face on the back of Professor Quirrell's head had only one extremely shocking thought in his mind. That is, this is a blasphemy against normal life forms, too. Put it another way, it's probably that everyone's sanity is dropping like crazy at the moment. Ordinary people who watched movies in their previous lives would feel horrified and disgusted when they saw this scene, not to mention these wizards. For them, Voldemort was a real person, and Voldemort could really do such a thing. However, just when everyone thought it was over, and little Harry would definitely be disappointed if Professor Dumbledore didn't appear soon, the Mirror of Erised appeared again. The previous fragment of the Mirror of Erised was a hidden foreshadowing, but now it has become the last line of defense preventing Voldemort from obtaining the Sorcerer's Stone. But the next development of the plot was incomprehensible to everyone. Voldemort actually wailed when he was touched by Harry, and even died at Harry's hands in the end. At this moment, wizards' minds are full of questions. Wait, is there something wrong? That's Voldemort. Without leaving everyone puzzled for too long, Professor Dumbledore, who came belatedly, explained everything, except why Harry could hurt Voldemort by contact, and the secret of hiding the Sorcerer's Stone with the Mirror of Erised. Those who want to get the Philosopher's Stone can only be deceived by illusions, and only those who don't want to get the Philosopher's Stone can actually get the Philosopher's Stone. Everyone couldn't help but applaud Professor Dumbledore's wonderful arrangement, and Professor Dumbledore accepted everyone's praise with a secret smile. At the dinner that followed, Gryffindor added points, Gryffindor won the House Cup, and everything was happy under the watch of Hagrid. Harry got on the express leaving Hogwarts, and the movie ended. What? A wonderful adventure story, eh? Which side? And then realized that the wizard next to him had something wrong with his expression. What's wrong with you? Nothing. That's not much of a story. The wizard thought to himself that he remembered what happened in Hogwarts that his son once shared with him after he returned, and it was almost exactly the same as in the movie. The audience chatted and left the screening room, seemingly in harmony, but many of them seemed to have their own ideas about the movie. Just now in the screening room, Adam had a panoramic view of everything, and after saying goodbye to Eugene and Bernard, he found the manager, let everyone work overtime. I want to see the second part on the screen next weekend. Chapter 341 Professionals. The popularity of the first part of The Boy Who Lived spread throughout the British wizarding community as soon as the premiere ended. Every page of the newspaper was filled with interviews with people who appeared in the movie at the same time. There is also a voice that cannot be ignored, that is, some belated parents and graduates suddenly discovered that they were actually so close to Voldemort. Moreover, Hogwarts, who learned about the situation afterwards, did not inform them of this incident. Don't say that it's just a movie and it's all fake. Even the points and reasons for the extra points at the end of the movie are consistent with reality. If you say it's a lie, please come out and tell me why you gave Harry and the others so many points. In response to such remarks, Hogwarts issued a statement stating that Voldemort was not really dead at that time. If the truth is told, everyone can recall the situation after Harry said that Voldemort was resurrected during the True Wizard tournament at that time. The wizards who were misled by the newspapers and believed that Professor Dumbledore and Harry were lying said, "The boomerang always comes so unexpectedly, and the reality of Chiguaguo is there so that no one can even say anything to refute it apart from the boomerang that silenced everyone." The second half of the Hogwarts statement was a bit intriguing. In the second half of the statement, Hogwarts said that starting from the second part, the plot of the movie will be more and more different from reality. Movies are movies after all. Please be able to calmly distinguish between what is virtual and what is reality. The wizards opened the newspaper and saw that the statement was not signed, and the words "it has nothing to do with any" were written crookedly on each line. They couldn't sleep anyway, so they read carefully for half the night, and then they saw the words between the words. Two words written all over the face were advertisement. After all, the back of this page clearly states that the second part will be released next weekend, so the wizards put down their newspapers one by one, cursing, and honestly planned to watch and buy tickets for the second part of the movie on the day the first movie premiered. Fantasy Cinema launched various peripherals of The Boy Who Lived and the first set of commemorative cards called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. You can draw one when you make any purchase at Fantasy Cinema. If you spend a certain amount, you can get a reward of any one of your choice. Originally, most wizards had little interest in this. Only those wizards who had collected chocolate frog cards were pleasantly surprised that there was another card that could be collected, but Fantasy Cinema also promised that after collecting the entire set of commemorative cards, you can exchange them for a commemorative card with a solid gold base. You must know that the card itself does not cost money, so isn't this just giving money away? And if you spend a certain amount, you have the opportunity to choose your own card. Don't worry about Fantasy Cinema secretly not releasing certain cards, and the set of cards is not many, only 24 in total, which is much faster to collect than the 101 cards of Chocolate Frog. At this time, Fantasy Cinema announced the launch of a redemption and full discount event. With a ticket stub of the movie ticket, you can get a part of the money for buying souvenirs off. If you round up, you can buy souvenirs and get free movie tickets. In addition, if you purchase a certain amount, there will be additional discounts, plus the opportunity to choose when the amount is reached and the chance to draw when you spend it. Rounding it all off, this is a free card draw and you will get money. Who can resist buying this? The wizard with outstanding mathematical ability immediately took out the parchment and calculated the price list of various products in Fantasy Cinema. Finally, he calculated that even one copper nat would not be wasted, and he could maximize the conversion of every expenditure. It's the perfect solution to draw the most cards and get the most discounts. Looking at the parchment in his hand, the wizard couldn't help laughing, as if he saw gold waving to him. "Who can earn more than me?" The manager looked at a set of gold-backed commemorative cards with a pure gold content of no more than 2 grams in front of him, and then looked at the account books in front of him with a skyrocketing income. He couldn't figure out how these people calculated the accounts. Why do everyone work so hard to spend money here and still look like they've made a lot of money? No, the essence of sales is to make customers feel that they have made a profit. Adam patted the manager on the shoulder and said sincerely, "You still have to learn." "Yes, boss." The manager nodded, admiring Adam in his heart. "Oh, by the way, boss." The manager suddenly remembered something. "Over there at the Ministry of Magic, is there any problem with purchasing group tickets?" The movie was a hit, so Adam asked Eugene to get some group tickets cheaply and give them as benefits to the employees, which was also a way to expand the audience base at the same time. For those who don't want to watch it originally, the free tickets cannot be wasted. After watching it once, the free tickets can be discounted to buy some practical items such as cups. Do you want to exchange them? Oops, I now have 2 cards in my hand with this exchange, which seems to be close to the full set. Otherwise, although the above things may not happen to everyone who doesn't go to the movies originally, every Adam earns 1 more, and he is not greedy. "Well, that's not true, boss. Mr. Minister asked me to tell you that the goblins seem to be making moves recently." "Oh," Adam frowned. Eugene had something to tell him. Why not use magic props instead of letting people pass the message? Adam glanced at the manager, who looked a little worried, and a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes. "Okay, I get it." Eugene was overthinking. The goblin trouble was even more insignificant to him than he thought, and he didn't need to resort to public opinion to incite other wizards, but it was really disturbing to deal with the goblin at this time. Adam frowned slightly. He was watching movies and making money during this period, and he was in a very good mood, but when he thought of the goblin, the joy in his mind was greatly reduced. How about, boss, if it's inconvenient, do you think it needs to be postponed? The manager thought Adam's frown was related to the goblin, and couldn't help but remind him, no, don't do unnecessary things. I will find professionals to solve the goblin problem. Professional people, when? The manager was stunned. Adam smiled slightly. Yes, professionals who deal with goblins. At first, he was thinking about pretending to be a big wave through the goblin, but times have changed. Now he only wants to watch the live rea of the movie parties. After all, he can find opportunities whenever he wants to pretend, but this kind of live rea is not always available. But the goblins can't be handed over to others casually. After all, the goblins came prepared this time. Wizards other than Adam, even the Ministry of Magic, would probably suffer certain casualties in dealing with the goblins. After thinking about it, Adam thought it would be better to hand it over to Yogg, a skilled worker. Yogg, who mastered ancient magic, was much stronger than ordinary wizards, and Yogg happened to be quite enthusiastic about saving the world. If it didn't work, he would do it. Although he thought so, Adam knew that the probability of him having to take action in the end was about 100%. Even if Yogg's strength could really suppress those goblins, he probably couldn't really be ruthless and do it too ruthlessly in the end, but he was different. Chapter 342 Harry, sweating. Sure enough, Hogwarts end-of-year dinner is held on this day every year. Adam glanced at the auditorium. The number of young wizards on the 4 long tables was incomparable to what it would have been 100 years ago. And the number of young wizards in earlier times was even smaller. Will there be many more students in Hogwarts in the future than there are now? Isadora looked at Adam curiously. Yes. Even if the worlds of wizards and muggles are separated, they will still have an impact on each other. The development of muggle productivity has greatly increased the number of wizards, those of mixed blood, and those born in muggles. The Wizard of Melon. Adam blinked, thinking that in the era of the 4 founders, only a handful of half-blood or muggle-born wizards survived to enter Hogwarts. The huge gap in quantity and quality between pure blood and non-pure blood, as well as the persecution received by wizards at that time, are probably the reasons why Salazar Slytherin advocated pure blood theory so much. But times have changed. Salazar Slytherin, Adam strolled to the side hall and looked up to see the colorful windows of the 4 founders. The theory of pure blood has long been outdated, and even the law of secrecy has begun to seem outdated due to the changes in the times. Fortunately, I am here. In this era, I have become a wizard, and I have enough power. Isadora didn't hear any clues. She just thought that Adam was referring to Hogwarts, whether the 2 worlds are ready to face each other or not. But I know we are ready. Several familiar figures who had always been around him flashed through his mind, and Adam smiled slightly. We will endure misunderstandings and resistance, but we will not stop. At this moment, footsteps were heard behind them. It was the young wizards who had finished the dinner and were now returning to the common room. Well, let's go. The figures of Adam and Isadora quietly disappeared and came to the room of requirement to wait for the person they were waiting for to arrive. Yogg and ominous didn't keep Adam waiting for long. In addition, Sebastian also came. Oh, Adam raised his eyebrows. Sebastian, are you here to see us off? Forward. Sebastian was speechless for a moment. Ominous shook his head and took the initiative to speak for Sebastian. Sebastian also wants to go with us 100 years from now. Sebastian seemed to be choked, and then said, well, all my friends are leaving. Anne's illness has recovered now. She prefers a quiet, trouble-free life. I am not suitable to stay by her side. I want to use my ability to qualified for the position of professor. It seemed that because of nervousness, his words were a bit inconsistent. Adam looked at Sebastian deeply. Of course I welcome every wizard who wants to come to Hogwarts to teach, and I don't feel comfortable leaving you alone. I don't know what the right thing was for us to go to Salazar Slytherin's study. It's wrong. Sebastian smiled happily when he heard this. Adam looked back. He was momentarily distracted by Sebastian's strong sense of déjà vu. Now it seems that Sebastian and Bernard are still very different. Sebastian's interest and talent are purely focused on black magic. For such a partial genius, in this era, Adam took away most of his bonds. I really didn't know what would happen in the end, but taking them away together would be fine. For Adam, it was an unexpected surprise. Have you packed everything? Let's get ready to leave now. When we get to the future, I will arrange for people to help you integrate into the future environment. As he spoke, Adam stretched out his hand and signaled Isadora with his eyes to take out the wand. But before that, there is one more thing to do. Are you willing? After making an unbreakable vow as usual, Adam took everyone directly to 100 years in the future. Leave it to me. I will help them get used to this drastically changed world. I happen to have a lot of free time recently. Everyone is going to the movies, and few people are here to drink. Well, that's up to you. Adam laughed, as if he didn't hear the complaint hidden in Regulus' words. That's right. The person Adam arranged to help everyone integrate into the future was Regulus, who had had similar experiences. Although Regulus is also a person from the future to everyone, the era they live in has not changed much, and the experiences from the past can basically be used before leaving. Adam did not forget to tell Yog, don't forget about the fairies. Don't worry, I'm good at this. It took me less than a year to eliminate the goblins' conspiracy. Without any surprise, Yog happily took over the task of dealing with goblins. He was originally worried that he would not be able to do the job of a professor, but he was too skilled at this kind of thing. Well, don't forget to go see a movie then. Adam smiled and nodded to everyone. At this moment, he didn't know that what Yug said about wiping out a goblin's conspiracy was actually literal. No matter what, time passes day by day, and in a blink of an eye, it is the day when the second part of The Boy Who Lived premieres. Of course, some people call it the name of the second set of commemorative cards that have already begun to be warmed up. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. To be honest, I'm a little afraid to watch this movie. Harry couldn't help but complain to Ron when he entered. It was a really rough year for me, in every sense of the word. First, he met Dobby, which led to a series of unsatisfactory things. Later, he was considered to be the heir of Slytherin during the Chamber of Secrets incident. Finally, he revealed that Adam had solved the monster in the Chamber of Secrets, but Adam seemed not to want to do this. Just thinking about it made Harry's eyes darken. Hey, don't just think that. At least that was the first time you came to our house as a guest that year. Do you still remember? Ron comforted him. Of course I remember. Wait, Harry couldn't help but swallowed. Do you still remember how I went to your house? Of course I remember. It was me, Fred, and George who drove the flying cart to your house to pick you up. Harry watched the movie slowly starting on the screen. It was very good. It started when he was at his aunt's house. Ron, tell me, if you drive a flying cart to pick me up in the movie, will you, me, Fred, George, and your father, be imprisoned in Azkaban because of this? Ron's body suddenly froze. Should not, right, then. Ron suddenly remembered something. By the way, didn't the previous statement from Hogwarts say that this movie will be very different from reality? No one knows anyway, so we just treat it as a fictional movie. Even if we can get away with this, what about the part where we drive the flying cart to Hogwarts? I remember we were even in the newspaper. Less than 5 minutes into the movie, Harry was already sweating profusely. After a few minutes, Ron gave an ugly smile. Anyway, on the bright side, at least Fred and George shouldn't have to go to Azkaban. Chapter 343. Aren't we villains? Harry and Ron looked at the big screen with hopeless eyes. Even though the wizards around him were expressing indignation and pity for him being locked up with iron bars by his uncle, Harry's mood did not improve, because he knew what was coming next. Sure enough, the Weasley family's flying car arrived as promised, causing a burst of amazement among the wizards. Even a muggle-born wizard remembered that there were muggles nearby claiming to see a car flying in the middle of the night, but later he didn't know whether everyone thought he was dreaming or the Ministry of Magic dealt with it. Bad news, Ron sighed. Fred and George probably can't run away. Harry didn't know how to react to this, but at least the Weasley family on the screen was very warm, which reminded him of the first time he went to the Weasley family and felt the warmth of something called family for the first time. Looking at himself in the movie, Harry let himself fall into memories and temporarily put aside the possibility of being imprisoned. Oh, this is really MRS. Molly couldn't help blushing when she saw the scene of herself being kissed on the screen. Why does this movie show everything? It's okay, dear, you're very beautiful. Arthur comforted his wife and was glad that his daughter didn't come because she was still studying at Hogwarts. At the beginning, she had been talking about how she looked when she first met Harry for a long time, but what the son said was right. This movie is really great. Arthur smiled with satisfaction at his family on the screen. Great. Fred and George are really great helpers. After seeing Fred and George call their parents over, Adam couldn't help but applaud. It's a pity that the wonderful plot is not on this part. I hope they can continue to maintain it, and even make persistent efforts to call the remaining family members who didn't come together. Zio-K, who was sitting at the table eating fruit and watching the movie because there was no one else around, tilted her head. Is there anything worth applauding in this plot? Sibi glanced at Adam, then followed Adam's line of sight. What Adam appreciates is probably different from what we appreciate. Come to think of it, although the movie was not produced by Adam, it was completed by Adam except for the final production. The person responsible for the production of the movie can be said to be a toolman. It is natural that Adam, who knows the plot of the movie very well, will pay more attention to the audience. The movie continued to move forward. Harry was teleported to Nocturne Alley because of a slip of the tongue when using flu powder, and happened to meet the Malfoy father and son who came to sell dangerous goods to avoid being checked. Wow, good news, it seems that Draco, that little bastard, will go to jail with us. Ron slapped his thigh. What good news is this? Harry couldn't help but squint his eyes. This plot brought back more memories for him, but he was immediately speechless by Ron's words, and in this case, at most his father would be sent to jail, and Draco is unlikely to be affected. Harry was an Auror who passed the assessment, and he had a better understanding of how to deal with similar situations. Is that so? Well, it would be fine if his father could be sent to jail. Ron sighed with regret. Coincidentally, the Malfoy family happened to be in the same screening room with them this time, but they were far away, so that neither side noticed each other. Dad, is this really okay? Draco was shocked. How could such a secret thing be discovered? And Potter was actually there at the time. Lucius was silent for a moment. He didn't expect that there would be such a scene in the movie. But then he said, "Don't worry. The Ministry of Magic is different now. If we want to be arrested, we have already been released from Azkaban. If it was the Ministry of Magic before, he would have to consider whether this was a hint that he should go to the Ministry of Magic to pay a sum of money, but the Ministry of Magic is different now. All his past crimes have been tried." Draco was relieved when he heard this. It was true, but Azkaban. Thinking of his aunt at home who was like a living dead and only had physiological instincts left after being released from Azkaban, Draco couldn't help but shudder and looked at the screen quickly. At this glance, Draco happened to see Borgin and Burke secretly taking a gold galleon from the table. Dad, I know that Borgin and Burke, or the entire Nocturne Alley, has been cleaned up by the Ministry of Magic a long time ago, and the crimes have been judged one by one. The Ministry of Magic notified me to take the gold galleon a long time ago. If you pass by one day, you can get it. Lucius couldn't help but sigh in his words. Although there is only a simple interest relationship between them, he has known old Burke for so many years after all. Fortunately, he only has a relationship of interest with each other during this period. Draco was stunned when he heard this. His first reaction was why his father didn't take it himself. Then he thought that going to the Ministry of Magic just to get that gold galleon seemed really unnecessary. Although the Malfoy family's old house was destroyed, the Ministry of Magic later attributed the loss to the Death Eaters and Voldemort, and they were compensated with a lot of money. They were not as poor as. This point Malfoy looked at the screen again. Harry, who was almost stabbed in the waist, had been taken away by Hagrid from Nocturne Alley and reunited with the Weasley family. Oh, seeing Lockhart come out with a smile, a low, painful cry rang out in the cinema. Mostly, they were the little wizards who happened to catch up with Professor Lockhart that year. Harry and Ron were no exception. Oh my God, why didn't I remember that he was the Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts that year? Harry looked painful, and now he even felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. I'd better go buy a Coke to suppress it. I should see him many times later, and I'm afraid I'll vomit. I'll go too. Ron stood up with Harry, and at the same time, there were many people who left or went to the toilet or bought water. Hiss. According to this rhythm, we seem to be villains in the movie. Lucius looked at the confrontation between himself and Arthur, especially the detail of him stuffing the diary into the second handbook was caught in a close-up, and couldn't help whispering. Draco looked at his father in surprise and asked in a low voice, "But, Dad, weren't we villains at the time?" No matter how much they were willing at the time, they were all on the side of the Death Eaters. Aren't they definitely villains? and the movie has not made up or distorted their descriptions so far. Lucius choked when he heard this, then looked at the popcorn bucket Draco was holding, and reached out to take the popcorn bucket to Narcissus's arms. You are changing your teeth recently, so you can't eat so much sweets, Draco. Chapter 344. Nowhere to escape. Let alone the minor issue that Draco, who had already changed his teeth, was deprived of the right to eat popcorn for no reason. The movie was still going on. Oh, I have to say that Professor Lockhart's influence is really not small. Yeah, the movie is still playing, and there is a long queue in front of the snack vendors. Harry and Ron, who came back from buying Coke, walked to their seats while complaining. Before they sat down, they heard the background music of the movie. Getting excited when the two looked up, they saw the scene of them driving a flying car into the air. Harry, Ron, how about we go out and get some fresh air? Ron turned his head and looked at Harry and blinked. Forget it, whatever. Harry sighed and decided to give up struggling. Watch the movie. Well, if the Ministry of Magic really wants to catch us, we can't run away. Anyway, this is indeed what we did. You are right, Ron also sighed, and the two who were playing badly returned to their seats and drank a sip of Coke. Not to mention, since the decision to play badly, the whole person's mental state has improved a lot. Putting aside the possible risk of imprisonment, the next clip of the two driving the flying car all the way to Hogwarts can be said to be full of jokes. It can be said that two people who can't drive can arrive at Hogwarts alive all the way. It can be said that they are lucky even from the perspective of a third party. Harry and Ron couldn't help but sigh that they really didn't want to experience it again. In the end, after being beaten by the Whomping Willow, the car that threw Harry and Ron out and ran away made the Hogwarts students who graduated in the past 2 years call it an Easter egg. So, that's how the car that can run by itself in the Forbidden Forest came from. Can't even beat a Whomping Willow? These two people can't do it either. They were only in the second year at that time, right? And Hogwarts was like this at that time, and few graduates could fight. Several graduates in the past 2 years whispered to each other, which made the wizards on the side feel a little dissatisfied and wanted to stand up and argue with each other immediately. But think about the reports about Hogwarts during this period. The actual combat strength of the graduates after the reform can even team up to solve the dragon. The wizard was furious and adjusted his sitting posture and sat back. The plot of the movie is still going on. Harry and Ron, who were late and caused a big disaster, were almost expelled from Hogwarts. Fortunately, Professor Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall saved them in the end. Then, oh, no, don't. Oh, Merlin. I'm going to the toilet. Ron looked at the owl flying into the hall with the holler letter in its mouth. His face turned green, and his expression was exactly the same as his in the movie. Ron, even if you are not here, it will not change the fact that everyone will see this past. Harry tried very hard not to laugh and reached out to keep Ron. Then, at least I don't have to go through it again. However, Ron was determined to leave. Seeing that he was about to open the holler letter in the movie, he had no choice but to leave now, so Harry could only recall this original reenactment alone. Ronald Weasley. How dare you? Classic Adam clapped again and cast a spell on the sound of the screening room, so Ron, who was standing outside the screening room drinking Coke, was hit in the face by the sound of the howling letter coming from behind him, which almost resonated with the entire cinema. Puff. Ron raised his slightly trembling hand and wiped his mouth, looking back at the door of the screening room behind him with a mask of pain. The volume of this howling letter, isn't it too realistic? After finally entering the howling letter segment, Ron took a deep breath and pretended that he couldn't hear the howling letter outside and walked back to the screening room, but he regretted it as soon as he entered the door. Please allow me to introduce to you your new defense against the dark arts professor. That's me, Gilderoy Lockhart. The man on the screen introduced himself with one hand on his waist. Looking at the wrinkled smiling face, Ron turned around and was about to walk out of the screening room. Hello, sir. The man in security uniform who appeared behind him startled Ron and almost screamed. Luckily, Ron raised his hand and suppressed his voice immediately. Otherwise the clip of shouting the letter just now would attract everyone's attention, and he would really be killed again. After suppressing the scream on his lips, Ron looked at the security guard in front of him. What's wrong? Hello, check the ticket stub. Oh, looking at the hand extended by the security guard in front of him, Ron took out his ticket stub and handed it to the other party in confusion, pretending to check it. Adam returned the ticket stub to Ron and smiled, confirmed, "Thank you for your cooperation. By the way, In order to prevent entering other screening rooms and disturbing other audiences, please do not leave the screening room without necessary needs. Okay, I know. Ron forced a smile, nodded, and then turned to his seat. Adam smiled with satisfaction, reached out to close the door of the screening room, and then disappeared. At this time, Lockhart on the screen had finished posting and started handing out his little test papers. The little wizards who had unfortunately experienced this scene could not help but tap their toes, especially a certain witch looking at herself on the screen, looking at Lockhart with admiration. Hermione almost dug a screening room on the ground with her toes, and couldn't help pinching her philtrum to prevent herself from fainting on the spot. Although she had tested her ability to withstand blows not long ago and it was still good. For example, Professor Snape would actually smile with relief or something, but now it was two completely different stimulations from before. After experiencing the torture later and knowing Lockhart's true face, looking back at the past, it was full of black history. With the rustling sound of everyone doing the questions, Hermione finally breathed a sigh of relief, but when she saw Professor Lockhart's praise for her and her reaction at the time, her hand that had just been put down was immediately raised up again, and she pinched her philtrum a few times. No. I can't do it. If I keep watching here, I'm afraid I will really faint. Hermione got up from her seat as if she was escaping, holding her stomach with one hand as if she had eaten something bad, and trotted all the way to the door. Hello, Mom. The security guard appeared again, exchanged a few words with Hermione in a low voice, then turned aside to let Hermione go to the toilet, and then smiled at Hermione's back after escaping into the women's toilet. Hermione took a deep breath and exhaled it for a long time. Fortunately, the incense in the toilet was of high quality, but even if there was a little odor, Hermione felt that she could accept it now. At least it was better than the past self who was obsessed with Lockhart. Right, in terms of disgust, Hermione felt that the latter was better. No, the latter was far better than the former, but the next moment, Hermione's voice for help rang in her ears. Hermione turned her head in disbelief and found that a signboard had appeared at the entrance of the toilet. Due to the recent popularity of the Boy Who Lived series of movies, in order to avoid too many viewers who choose to go to the toilet after the movie because they don't want to miss any plots, causing accidents, the toilet will play the sound of the movie simultaneously. Hermione? Question mark? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345. The necessity of monitoring is reflected at this time. Vomit. Hey, seeing Ron starting to spit out slugs, the wizards in the cinema all show disgusted expressions. Is this also true? A young wizard couldn't help but lower his voice and asked his girlfriend, "How do I know this? Aren't you in the same class as Ron and Harry?" The witch rolled her eyes. "You are only 1 year older than me. Weren't you also at Hogwarts at that time?" Forward, stop guessing and read the newspaper when the time comes. Listen to what the naysayers are doing with their movie magnifying glass campaign, specifically investigating which plots in the movie are true and which are fiction. The quibbler. The wizard glanced at Ron, who was still spitting out slugs on the screen, and looked at his girlfriend curiously. "I remember, wasn't that a magazine that was keen on promoting imaginary magical animals and publishing non-mainstream news? Did you also subscribe to it?" "Well, I ordered that one mainly because the naysaying editor-in-chief has now been replaced by the original editor-in-chief's daughter, and there is some extra knowledge about beauty and skincare in the magazine." The witch coughed awkwardly, not admitting that she had ordered the quibbler for other purposes. You know, even if Rita Skeeter of the Daily Prophet wanted to fabricate news, she would have to actually find someone to interview, take photos, and then twist the other person's meaning and write according to such and such person involved. But the devil's advocate is different. The news published above can even start with "someone heard." If the former is a history book that no longer insists on straight writing, then the latter is a pure unofficial history. You can imagine how exciting the content above is. Therefore, although the latter has been criticized, its sales volume is actually far better than former. Huh? Wait a moment. Also, the witch glanced thoughtfully at her boyfriend beside her. "Oh? Is that so?" The wizard rolled his eyes. "Now that the quibbler has launched this magnifying glass section, it seems I should subscribe and recall my past campus days." The two looked at each other and saw a similar light in each other's eyes. Hermione came back from the toilet with a speechless face at this time. She remembered that memory so clearly that she could hear the sound and picture it. Hiding in the toilet had no effect when she sat down. She looked up and saw Harry signing Professor Lockhart's autograph in Professor Lockhart's office. When was that? Oh, I remembered. Harry drove the flying cart to Hogwarts before and was imprisoned by Professor McGonagall. This was the content of Harry's confinement. Hermione covered her head and shook her head helplessly. At this time, the disadvantage of having a too good memory was revealed. At this moment, a hoarse whisper came from the movie, causing Hermione to frown. That was. She remembered that Harry said he heard something at that time, and that voice also said he wanted to kill people. Could it be this? Hermione remembered that that day was indeed unusual. That's why she remembered it so clearly, and after that, Hermione took a deep breath and watched the movie continue to advance. Sure enough, the trio in the movie discovered a bloody writing on the wall just as she remembered. As of now, Hermione blinked and continued to recall, except that Professor Lockhart is extraordinarily normal. Well, it doesn't seem to be that normal, except for the fact that Professor Lockhart occasionally goes crazy during class. There are basically no big differences, so the movie that was promoted at the time would have a fictional part. Where was it? This shows the wisdom of later installing surveillance in Hogwarts. A mixed blood wizard couldn't help but sigh. Such a thing would not happen in Hogwarts now. Every public place is covered with surveillance magic. Compared with Muggle surveillance, the principal surveillance spell is more powerful. Not only does it have no blind spots, but once it is affected by the magic, it will directly alert the nearest professor and grant the two professors the authority to operate. On the other hand, as soon as this regulation came out, it can be said that it directly shattered the dream of the little wizard who wanted to travel at night. Nonsense. At that time, all the little wizards were busy doing homework. How could they have time to go on night tours? Adam could see through at a glance the insincerity hidden in the thoughts that the wizard couldn't help but think about later. Want to dream of a little wizard who goes on a night tour? It's obviously a fantasy that he and his girlfriend secretly hide in an abandoned classroom to make out. How can that great youth be used for puppy love? Do you have a sound outlook on life? Do you have the capital to take responsibility for your actions? Go and study for me. Look at your transcript. How can you sleep at your age and with these scores? Exclamation mark. By the way, Adam turned over the wizard's subsequent results and nodded with satisfaction. Sure enough, after the seedling of puppy love was nipped off, his performance improved quickly. The movie continued, and after some deliberation, the trio decided not to tell the professors about the abnormality Harry encountered. They should have told us, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but say, then looked at Professor Dumbledore beside him and narrowed his eyes. Professor Dumbledore, didn't you know about this at the time? Why don't I remember hearing you mention it? When the three chatted, the wall next to them was covered with portraits. The students might not know, but Professor McGonagall certainly knew that those portraits belonged to the headmaster before Hogwarts set up surveillance magic. Surveillance with blind spots. However, although Hogwarts had blind spots without portraits, now that the three of them were in front of the portraits, there was obviously no such thing as blind spots. Well, Professor Dumbledore fiddled with his fingers, and moved his drooping head. It was unclear whether he was nodding or shaking his head. Professor Grindelwald said lightly, "This is a movie after all, Professor McGonagall." Professor McGonagall also knew that it was meaningless to turn around and ask now, but she still glared at Professor Dumbledore, then gathered her shawl and looked at the screen. It seems that these movies can open my eyes. Turning her head, Professor McGonagall couldn't help frowning. How could Professor Binns tell these things to the students? In the movie, Professor Binns reluctantly explained the legend of the Chamber of Secrets to everyone at Hermione's request. In this regard, the audience discussed, "So is this legend true? I also heard this legend when I was in Hogwarts. It should be. After all, Harry Potter heard a sound before. It should be the monster in the Chamber of Secrets." So, the Chamber of Secrets refers to this Chamber of Secrets. With the experience of the commemorative card set of the previous movie, everyone has learned to find clues from the name of the commemorative card set. Before, it was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and the main line of the whole movie was the Sorcerer's Stone. So this time the obvious main line is the Chamber of Secrets, but Hogwarts is so big, God knows how many places can be called Chamber of Secrets. Although some people claim that the Chamber of Secrets refers to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, there are many other similar voices, and everyone swears it was not until now that everyone was able to confirm the true direction of the Chamber of Secrets. The voice of discussion only lasted for a while and quickly subsided. Everyone was curious about what would happen next. Pairs of eyes seeking knowledge were cast on the big screen. Chapter 346. Such possibilities must be contained. Oh, why did I forget this? Watching the clip in the movie where she used Professor Lockhart's signature to enter the restricted book zone, and then stole Professor Snape's potion ingredients to brew Polyjuice potion, Hermione patted her forehead. Why don't you apologize again? Hermione fell into deep thought, then looked at the screen. Forget it. There may be things I forgot, so I might as well wait until I finish the whole series and apologize all at once. After gathering her thoughts, Hermione looked at the screen again. At this time, the plot had advanced to the point where Harry's Quidditch match had another accident. A bludger was chasing Harry like crazy. Hermione, I remember that house elf was causing trouble. Hermione sighed as she watched Harry being chased up and down in the movie. Although he was so talented in Quidditch, he chose to become an Auror after graduation. It is hard to say that Harry's choice was not influenced by the several Quidditch matches he played on campus. Dobby, obviously, the person involved, had more resentment towards this house elf that was always causing trouble, although Harry later learned through his exchange with Dobby that Dobby did this to him for his own safety. But the monster in the secret room did not pose any real danger except that Mrs. Norris was petrified, but Dobby actually hurt him for his safety, and again recalling that I was locked up by my uncle because of Dobby, that I couldn't enter platform 9 3/4 because of Dobby, that I fell off my broomstick because of Dobby, even though he knew Dobby's intentions were good. Harry still wanted to ask if he could not set off yet, seeing himself falling off his broomstick in the movie. Harry groaned in empathy and couldn't help but close his eyes as Lockhart chanted a spell to his movie self. He refused to recall that painful past. However, when Dobby's voice rang out and told Harry on the hospital bed what efforts he had made to get Harry home, Harry couldn't help but open his eyes. Because of the nature of his work during this period, Harry even had a bit of murderous look in his eyes. If Dobby hadn't controlled the bludger, he wouldn't have fallen off his broomstick. If he hadn't fallen off his broomstick, his arm wouldn't have been broken. If his arm hadn't been broken, he wouldn't have being grabbed by Lockhart. The bones in his arm were reduced to nothing. There is no need to drink that bone-growing spirit. Every third night, I will be woken up by the feeling of rapid bone growth. Now thinking back to that painful time, Harry felt waves of phantom pain in his arms. At this moment, Harry was not the only one who had murderous intentions towards Dobby. The Malfoy family watched the house elf on the screen complaining about his experience, and the three of them fell into unanimous silence. A tortured house elf can cast so many magics without a wand, sealing the passage to platform 9 3/4, controlling the bludger, defying conventional anti-apparition magic. I didn't know that our house elf still had such abilities and ideas, Lucius whispered with a sullen face. That's why I said, when Adam saw this, he rarely looked at the screen. Imagine a species that is powerful and ambitious, something that may have to be curbed. Don't say anything about house elves being pitiful. Adam is a human. Should he still consider it from the perspective of a house elf? Moreover, this kind of magical creature was created to serve wizards, similar to AI on the technological side, so the idea of obedience will be rooted in the thoughts of this creature and passed down from generation to generation. Even Dobby, who was born with free will, had to abide by it. This constraint. Why do people think Dobby's salary demands are outrageous? Can you imagine that your AI such as Siri, Xiaoi or Xiaodu suddenly starts asking you for your salary? Is this the awakening of the souls of the enslaved? This is the Witcher's version of Omnicrisis. Thinking of this, Adam suddenly thought of the goblins on the other side. They seemed to be planning to launch a formal attack. Britain was the first battlefield they chose, and it was also their base after the initial victory in their plan. Adam was anxious to watch the show, so he asked this question to Yug, who had foiled the goblins' conspiracy. It's been 2 weeks, and I don't know if Yug has started taking action. Is it going well? Just when Adam was thinking about whether to contact Yug with parchment, collapse to the ground. Retreat the enemy 3 feet. Expelliarmus. Shock absorption and speed stop. A figure disappeared and appeared, walking through the group of goblins like a ghost. The goblins' attacks could only pass through the afterimage dragged by the man, and they could only let out incompetent and furious yells and curses after the attack failed or was hit by a curse roar. You bastard! Heartbreaking and bone-cutting, revealing his figure, Yug scolded the goblin in front of him who was already cursing. The ancient magical energy in his body silently entered the other person's body along with the Cruciatus curse, creating a slight rift with the other goblins around him. There is no connection, that's almost it. The next step is, there was a bit of excitement in Yug's eyes. Avada Kedavra, the dazzling green light penetrated into the body of the painful goblin in front of him. Then, with the goblin as the center, dozens of the same green light burst out, tracing the connection created by ancient magic towards the goblins who had just been hit by the curse. In an instant, the entire goblin camp was illuminated by green light. After the light dimmed, the 3 remaining goblins in the camp looked at their fallen companions around them in horror, and couldn't help but let out sharp screams. I only missed 3 this time. Am I stronger or are the fairies now too weak? Yug turned the wand in his hand like a pen. Oh, I remembered. You probably don't know that you have to stand more spread out when facing me. Last time, there were too many obstacles that blocked the life-killing curse. Transform quickly. The scream of a goblin suddenly stopped. The powerful power of ancient magic broke through the protection of the body by magic and twisted him into a barrel filled with gunpowder. With a light wave of Yog's wand, the barrel flew towards the goblin. After an explosion, the remaining 2 screams disappeared. One of the owners disappeared in the flames of the explosion, and the remaining one was so frightened that he lost his voice. But being weak is really weak. It's unbelievable. I'm killing an elf camp now and I don't even need armor for protection. Yug played with a wand in his hand and slowly walked towards the only remaining goblin. I remember, a fairy dressed like you would have a higher status. Goblins dressed like this were commanders among goblins, at least 100 years ago, and today, 100 years later, Yug is not sure whether these experiences are still valid. So, do you know where the other goblin camps are? After hearing the question, the fear in the goblin's eyes subsided a little, and turned into cunning and anger. The soul is out of body. With a tap of the wand, the goblin's thoughts gradually drifted away, falling into a hazy trance. He seemed to said something. Thank you, shattered to pieces. Chapter 347. Everyone speaks Parseltongue. How is your situation now? Are you in danger? Finally, Adam couldn't help but feel a little worried and sent a message to Yug. Yug seemed to be free and replied in a few minutes, sweeping the goblins. He returned to himself. Everything is going well. I'm almost well. Well, everything is going well. That should be good. I didn't hear ominous and others say that Yug has the habit of reporting good news but not bad news. As for being well, it probably refers to the goblin base he has found now, right? Adam nodded with satisfaction, replied that's good, be careful, and turned his attention back to the people in the screening room. This is the exciting moment. Oh, it's coming soon. I remember that time when Professor Lockhart was hung up and beaten by Adam. Ron rubbed his hands excitedly. I think Adam probably won't appear. Harry shook his head. Didn't you notice? Nothing about Adam appeared before, whether it was the food he made, the small shop he opened, or anything else. As the producer of the movie, if Adam wanted to show his face, there would be no shot on the first part. But Harry watched the first part and thought about it and didn't find that Adam had shown his face. Harry guessed that Adam would be completely invisible in the entire series. Sure enough, in the movie, after Professor Snape came on stage, Adam did not appear. Instead, Professor Lockhart directly started the so-called duel demonstration with Professor Snape. My God, Professor Lockhart was beaten like that by Adam. I dare not watch the next scene. Ron clapped his hands excitedly, his eyes wide open. Luckily, on the other side was Harry, who didn't mind Ron's uncivilized behavior in the cinema at all, because he was also a little excited. However, it was a pity that Professor Snape only gave Professor Lockhart a disarming spell. Ron lowered his voice and hissed in dissatisfaction, but Lockhart then showed Professor Snape that he was actually giving in to the other party. Professor Snape immediately said that he would show everyone how to stop the dark magic. High EQ? Show everyone how to stop the dark magic. Low EQ? I will use the dark magic to hit you next. Under the expectant eyes of the theater audience, Lockhart laughed and said that he would pick a pair of volunteers to demonstrate to everyone. When Harry and Malfoy finally stood on the duel stage, many people secretly said, I knew it. These parties also discovered that Adam eliminated his own existence, and at the same time seemed to deliberately magnify the conflict between Harry and other Gryffindors and Malfoy and other Slytherins. Professor Grindelwald didn't think so. I think it might be more appropriate to state the facts. Professor Dumbledore frowned and said, no, even if it is a statement of facts, the meaning you want to express can be magnified through deliberately created shots. Although conflict can promote the plot, it will continue to strengthen the villain attributes of Slytherin's studies. Grindelwald shrugged his shoulders. Just tell me if it is realistic or not, Professor Dumbledore. It is indeed realistic. At least now that Adam has taken himself out of the story, all the developments are still in line with the personalities of everyone in the story. Professor Snape will never spoil Lockhart, nor will he miss the opportunity to cause trouble for Harry in such a small place, or make him look bad up. Of course, it was Professor Snape at the time. Professor Dumbledore's eyelids suddenly twitched when he thought of the changes in his colleague during this period of time. At this time, Harry in the movie showed his ability to speak Parseltongue, and the students around him looked at him with horror. Well, speaking of which, we can ask Ominous to open an elective course in Parseltongue at Hogwarts in the future. After all, this ability can be learned later. Everyone speaks Parseltongue? Those purebloods may come to learn it specifically to show their pure bloodline and get close to Salazar Slytherin. Adam looked at Ron with interest. He was actually a little language genius. Harry was silent and frowned slightly while watching the movie at this time, because he found that he seemed to not understand the words of the snakes in the movie. Is it because this is just a movie, and the sound of the snakes is just made up, or Harry never thought of using his ability to speak Parseltongue to do anything, and he didn't encounter snakes at all after that year, let alone after graduation, so he didn't know that he had lost his Parseltongue. Similarly, Harry, who was vaguely excluded from the action of destroying Voldemort, did not know that there was a fragment of Voldemort's soul in his body. He only knew that he had a deep connection with Voldemort. Well, after all, he almost lost his godfather in a soul letter scam, so the memory is of course deep. Harry felt that he seemed to be able to learn a lot of things he didn't know through these movies, things that Professor Dumbledore and Sirius were unwilling to tell him. Unlike Harry and some insiders who had mixed feelings, other audiences were very surprised. After all, Parseltongue was really a rare ability since the Gaunt family, which always claimed to be the direct descendants of Slytherin, disappeared. The wizarding world has never heard of any family with Parseltongue. It's a pity that it's a Gryffindor. It's all that Weasley, otherwise Harry Potter would be a Slytherin. 1. Slytherin whispered dissatisfiedly when Harry was sorted. The first choice given by the sorting hat was actually Slytherin. Harry was shocked by this. How did Adam know this thing that only he should know? However, Professor Dumbledore and the others could understand that although the sorting process was private, it was impossible for the principal to hide it from the principal if he was determined to ask the sorting hat. The movie is still going on. Harry is suspected by everyone because of his ability to speak Parseltongue that he is the heir to open the Chamber of Secrets. Then Justin, who is found to have been attacked and petrified, seems to confirm this suspicion. Panic began to spread within Hogwarts. Did it seem that miserable at the time? Harry couldn't help but whisper, because none of us were actually attacked at the time, Ron guessed, and Harry had to admit that Ron had a point. Speaking of which, I remember that the monster in the secret room was a basilisk. Why were they all just petrified? After all, he has experienced the reformed education model of Hogwarts. Basilisk, as an extremely dangerous magical animal, is a required knowledge in today's Hogwarts. I think maybe it's because neither of them actually looked into the basilisk's eyes. Colin saw it through the camera. Justin seemed to see it through nearly headless Nick, and nearly didn't the head Nick. He is already a ghost. Harry clapped his fingers, and then sighed. At that time, Professor Dumbledore speculated that Mrs. Norris was petrified because she saw the reflection in the armor. Adam probably set similar conditions for each victim based on this. Chapter 348: The Great Prophet and the Reverse Prophet. That makes sense. But isn't this a bit too deliberate? It just so happens that everyone is so coincidental. Faced with Ron's questioning, Harry rolled his eyes. Otherwise, do you still want to see Hogwarts bloodshed in the movie? Your wish will be granted. Harry, hearing this, Adam smiled but said nothing. Harry, who didn't know that his words had come true, was still paying attention to the content of the movie, because the current content of the movie has entered a stage he has never experienced, especially the clip after he and Ron drank the Polyjuice potion and turned into Crabbe and Goyle. Hiss, Harry and Ron rubbed their hands on their thighs and sighed regretfully. I should have bought some popcorn just now. I think the same as you, Harry. It has to be said that this movie became exciting after it was separated from reality. At the same time, Draco in another theater watched his performance in the movie and broke down quietly again. After getting the news from Draco, Harry and Ron, who found that the effect of the Polyjuice potion was about to end, hurriedly retreated to find Hermione, but found that Hermione had become a real catgirl because she used the wrong hair of the target to be transformed. Wow! Harry couldn't help but exclaimed, and then suddenly remembered something and turned to look at Ron. Ron looked at the screen in a daze, and then turned his head to look at Harry as if he had noticed something. Harry quickly turned his head back before Ron looked at him. When he turned his head, Harry saw himself and Ron in the movie stepping over a piece of water surface. Reflection. Harry frowned. According to previous speculation, this water surface might be a hint that someone was attacked again. However, Harry did not guess correctly. He and Ron walked into the women's bathroom where Moaning Myrtle was, and found a book that was said to be used by someone to hit Myrtle. Something is wrong. Before, Hermione in the movie said that no one would go there. Why did someone suddenly go there and hit Myrtle with a book? And after hitting it, they left the book there and walked away. Harry found something wrong. In the movie, the three of them had been brewing Polyjuice Potion there for half a semester without being discovered. Obviously, Hermione was right, so, the other party probably didn't go for Myrtle, but just threw books. Harry squinted and stared at the book picked up by himself in the movie, frowning. Why does it seem a little familiar? But soon Harry didn't think about those things anymore. Harry's eyelids twitched when he saw himself in the movie discovering that Tom Marvolo Riddle's diary could absorb ink, and then tried to talk to it directly. Harry's no longer the Harry who knew nothing about the wizarding world. During his time as an Auror, he has seen many dark wizards and dark magic items, and knows how dangerous this is. No, you know nothing about the danger here, Adam complained, and then looked at Lucius, who really knew how dangerous this matter was. Lucius was sweating profusely at this moment. That diary is actually alive? Exclamation mark. You know, it was given to him by Voldemort at the beginning, and he threw it to Ginny Weasley himself. Doesn't that mean the diary knows what he did? What the diary knows, will Voldemort know? Was the diary a magic prop that Voldemort used to monitor himself from the beginning? For a while, various thoughts came and went in Lucius's mind. Even though Voldemort has been dead for so long, the psychological shadow left by such a long time cannot be cleared overnight. Lucius was a little scared when he saw the face on the back of Professor Quirrell's head, let alone now. Fortunately, Voldemort has been confirmed to be dead completely, otherwise he would have to sleep with his eyes open tonight. No matter what Harry thinks now, he has to admit that he did lack common sense about the wizarding world at the time. He can only watch himself in the movie chatting happily with a diary with a complicated face. Wow, so brave. Harry glared at Ron, who was watching the fun and making trouble. Ron smiled awkwardly after being glared at. Well, in fact, such a diary is not necessarily a dark magic item, and, look at the other person's handwriting, it's so beautiful. Maybe he is a good student? Don't forget that he also won the Special Contribution Award at that time. Ron's brain was working rapidly at this moment. Maybe in the movie, you got the clues from 50 years ago through this diary, so as to find the heir and eliminate the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. Just when Harry thought that Ron's impromptu plot was quite reasonable, the two saw the diary in the movie showing Harry's memories from 50 years ago. Not to mention how incredible it is that a diary can store and display memories like a pensieve. The person in the memory who was expelled for opening the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago turned out to be Hagrid. In another screening room, Professor Grindelwald's focus was not on these things. Although he did not participate in the elimination of Voldemort, he knew more than Harry and the others just by watching from the side. Tom Marvolo Riddle was Voldemort in the future, and judging by the power displayed by the diary, it was obvious that the diary was a Horcrux. But that's not the point. Professor Grindelwald crossed his legs, turned his body and looked at Professor Dumbledore, whose face was not good looking, and smiled slightly. Time always repeats itself again and again, doesn't it, Albus? After the same thing happened, facing the same question raised by Professor Dumbledore, Harry and Tom gave the same answer. Professor Grindelwald did not think this was a simple coincidence. As Professor Dumbledore said just now, even if it was a statement of facts, the camera also concealed the meaning that the filmmaker wanted to express. It's just a movie, Professor Grindelwald, and this content did not happen in reality, Professor Dumbledore said lightly. Well, you're right, Professor. Grindelwald smiled slightly and looked at the screen again. At this time, a new victim appeared in the movie, Hermione. At this moment, Harry's suspicion was cleared, because everyone knew that he and Hermione were friends, and most of the young wizards believed that Harry was not the heir of Slytherin. But what followed was a greater panic at Hogwarts. Originally, even though everyone thought Harry was the heir, they were not too scared. They just rejected him and avoided him. After all, the identity of the heir was known, and everyone just had to be careful not to let him know that he was a half-blood or muggle born. But now Harry's not the heir, then who is? Watching Professor McGonagall announce with a sad face in the movie that Hogwarts might be closed, the audience couldn't help but feel their hearts tightened. Chapter 349 The secret room is finally revealed. Oh, the one who couldn't hold back the most about this scene was Professor McGonagall herself. So far, everything in the movie was so reasonable. If she hadn't experienced a reality different from the movie, she would almost doubt that the movie was the real world and Professor McGonagall was not like the two old men around her. She came to watch this movie with a different purpose. When watching the movie, she only had a love for Hogwarts in her heart. Because of this, Professor McGonagall's sense of substitution was almost full. She looked at herself with red eyes on the screen and wiped away her tears silently. Originally thought that the situation had become so bad, Harry and Ron went to Hagrid in the middle of the night to ask about the secret room, but they just got the news that Hagrid was taken away by the Ministry of Magic and Professor Dumbledore was suspended by the Board of Directors. Hogwarts, which was already in turmoil, was immediately worse. But fortunately, Harry and Ron were not completely without gain. The people from the Ministry of Magic came after them, so Hagrid knew of their existence and left them clues before leaving. Professor Dumbledore's words before leaving seemed to be meant for him. Professor Dumbledore can see through the invisibility cloak. Ron was a little confused, and Harry thought, it's not impossible. Think about it. Although the invisibility cloak was used by my father, who gave it to me, Ron remembered that the invisibility cloak was a gift Harry received on his first Christmas at Hogwarts, along with an unsigned letter. If it was Professor Dumbledore, it would be reasonable. Next, Ron and Harry followed Hagrid's instructions and followed the spiders that escaped from the school all the way into the Forbidden Forest. Many wizards in the screening room were a little excited. Can we finally see the inside of the Forbidden Forest again? Yes, if it wasn't for the last movie, I wouldn't have known that there were unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. Tisk. Suddenly, a disdainful sneer came from not far away, and the two wizards who were just communicating with each other couldn't help but look in that direction. And then saw a young wizard looking at them with a smile. Seeing the two looking at him, the young wizard smiled even brighter. Now the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts is no longer completely forbidden to students. As long as you pass the test, you can enter the corresponding area. There are more magical animals in it than before. While speaking, the young wizard glanced at the screen. Oh, it turned out to be an 8-eyed giant spider. This thing is also quite rare in the Forbidden Forest. It only appears in fixed nests. I heard from Professor Grindelwald that they are too fertile, so Professor Gandalf has limited their number. The young wizard's chatter suddenly stopped, and his face suddenly became a little ugly. The two wizards looked at the screen curiously, and saw the vast number of 8-eyed giant spiders that surrounded Harry and Ron. Their expressions suddenly became ugly. No wonder Professor Gandalf wants to limit their number, the young wizard murmured. Faced with the siege of the 8-eyed giant spider, Harry and Ron relied on the flying car that suddenly rushed out to save the scene and escaped by chance. Okay, Ron, there are no more Acromantulas. After hearing what Harry said, Ron opened his eyes and looked at himself cursing in the movie. He felt that this movie, or Adam, really knew him too well. It's okay to know that he is afraid of spiders, but he even knows his personality clearly. Ron believes that if he really encounters the situation in the movie, he will really say those words in the movie. Before Ron recovered from the after effects of fear, the movie threw out another terrifying news. Ginny was captured in the Chamber of Secrets. What? How could this be? Ginny is a pureblood, Harry said in astonishment, and Ron looked a little ugly. I don't think the mastermind behind this is someone who would care about such things. The Weasley family has always been called pure-blood traitors. Since he is the heir of Slytherin, he must be a fanatical supporter of pure-blood theory. It is normal to list the Weasley family as a target of attack. The only question now is, who is that heir? The same question troubled everyone in the movie and many viewers in the theater. Who is the villain of this movie? Even if Adam invented a character as the villain, that character should have appeared by now, right? It can't be that Professor Lockhart is the heir, and his incompetence is all pretended, just like Professor Quirrell in the previous movie. No, it's impossible. All the little wizards who have really come into contact with Professor Lockhart at Hogwarts have categorically denied this speculation. Only a very few people know or speculate the truth about the so-called heir based on more information than others, but they obviously won't speak out casually. The movie is still going on. Professor Lockhart was exposed in the office. He tried to resist, but the resistance plan collapsed. He had to be forced by Harry and Ron to find the Chamber of Secrets together. Almost all the audience watched the movie seriously. They all wanted to know the truth about the legendary Chamber of Secrets. The legendary Chamber of Secrets left by Salazar Slytherin one of the four great men who founded Hogwarts. However, as Harry explored and deciphered the secrets, the audience's expressions almost broke down on the spot. Why is the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets in an abandoned women's bathroom? Exclamation mark. etc. The ladies' room was abandoned because of Moaning Myrtle, but it must have been in normal use before that, so when Salazar Slytherin entered the Chamber of Secrets, the expressions of the audience became wonderful. So, at that time, was that person also Lucius's expression is particularly wonderful? Dad, what did you say? Draco turned his head in confusion, feeling that his father knew something he didn't know. Nothing, just keep reading. Lucius felt that he didn't know where to start explaining, but the movie should explain the causes and consequences. Seeing that the movie has now entered its climax, Draco nodded and looked at the screen. Harry and the others also knew that they should have entered the stage of trying to break through with the three of them in the previous movie, and they would soon know the truth of the matter. Speaking of which, we only heard from Dobby that Adam had solved the monster. We didn't know the specific situation. Now we can just take a look at what Adam encountered. Harry thought Adam would put his experience on himself, but when he saw a large pile of snakeskins on the ground, the smile gradually disappeared from his face. Wait, this difficulty level seems to be a bit different from the level they passed in the first year. For such a big snakeskin, how old must the owner of the snakeskin be? Exclamation mark. Basilisk is also a supermodel in the high difficulty level of the 5th area. Because of its extremely dangerous ability, it was restricted to a specific cave area by Professor Gandalf. Generally speaking, no young wizard would choose it. Challenged the basilisk, including Harry and the others, of course. So although Harry knew the information about the basilisk, it was only on paper. Only now did he really feel the visual impact. Chapter 350. Harry, I'm fighting a basilisk in my 2nd year? Retaining the abilities of the basilisk that I had learned before, adding the size difference and the strong body of the giant magical animal, and then substituting in my own strength at the time. After a simple calculation, Harry smiled confidently. It only takes 10 of me to fill the basilisk's stomach. No, there is no way to fight it at all. I was only in the 2nd grade in the movie. Even now, Harry didn't dare to say that he and Ron could deal with the basilisk alone, let alone them at that time. At this moment, Professor Lockhart in the movie pretended to be unconscious and took away Ron's wand. When he was about to cast Obliviate on them, the spell backfired and hid himself because of the malfunction of Ron's wand. It must be said that Professor Lockhart's Obliviate was really something. Not only did it clear his own memory, but it also collapsed a part of the ceiling, cutting him and Ron off in the space behind Harry. Harry's thoughts stagnated, and then he changed his words. Okay, now I have to fight a basilisk alone. This is even more unbearable. Harry's eyes lost their light. From his point of view, the movie, it would be a complete suicide for him to deal with the basilisk, but the strange thing is, he is the protagonist, and the protagonist should be able to survive to the end. Otherwise, how can the subsequent movies be filmed? And what should be done with Ginny, who was captured by the air? Then he saw himself in the movie resolutely going alone to save Ginny. Harry, was he really so brave back then? In fact, this is mainly due to different experiences. The most thrilling situation Harry in the original book had encountered until then was being surrounded by acromantids, but he escaped without fighting by relying on the flying car. But now Harry has truly learned how powerful those powerful magical animals are through the Forbidden Forest, so naturally he no longer has the courage of a newborn calf. In addition, Harry is now an outsider. People watching movies is also an influencing factor. If he really enters that situation, he will still make the same decision as Harry continued to go deeper. Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets gradually appeared in front of everyone. The cave-like environment outside was just the outer area. After entering the Chamber of Secrets, the passage in the middle of the pool, the snake statues on both sides, and the facial relief of Salazar Slytherin himself at the end of the passage made the audience sigh from the bottom of their hearts. This Chamber of Secrets is so Slytherin. Harry found Ginny lying on the ground at the end of the passage, and at the same time, the air finally showed his true self. The moment he saw the figure, Lucius covered his heart on the spot. Dad, faced with Draco's concern, Lucius gritted his teeth and shook his head. I'm fine. It's okay, it's all in the past. He was just a little scared. Draco looked back at the movie in doubt. His eyes fell on the suddenly appeared Tom Riddle. Father became like this after seeing this person. Is there something wrong with his identity? Draco's doubts did not last long. Tom Riddle barely concealed his malice, but he still answered Harry's doubts, including how he controlled Ginny to open the Chamber of Secrets and release the basilisk. How he misled Harry into thinking that Hagrid was the heir. Harry in the movie mocked him for not killing anyone so far, and all the victims were just petrified, but he didn't expect Tom to say that his attention was no longer on killing. Tom's target was him, me. The doubts in Harry's heart at this time, who was watching the movie, were synchronized with Harry in the movie. Then, in Harry's shocked eyes, Tom Marvolo Riddle revealed the word game of rearranged letters and his identity. He was Voldemort, so he would pay attention to Harry after learning the current information. How did this guy who had severely injured his future self when he was a baby and was hit by the killing curse but only left a scar do it? Well said. I don't know, Harry complained, but at the same time he sat up straight. Can he know the truth of everything from the movie? Yes, but not this one. Adam took a sip of Coke and looked around. Almost all the audience were immersed in the horror brought by Tom's self-revealing identity. Few people knew Voldemort's past among the people present. Tom in his youth and Voldemort in the future had no similarities in appearance, so naturally they had never associated it in that direction before. However, now that I suddenly learned about Voldemort's past, and then connected it with the content of the movie just now, I couldn't help but feel a chill. If you don't know Voldemort's future and those hidden truths, who would have thought that this handsome young man would have such a dark heart and become the nightmare of the British wizarding world in the future? And according to Tom himself, the thing that caused chaos in Hogwarts and almost closed Hogwarts was just a memory when he was 16. How powerful was Voldemort at that time? Harry and Tom's verbal confrontation became more and more intense. At this moment, a cry came from a distance, and Fawkes suddenly flew into the secret room, bringing the Sorting Hat for Harry. Harry couldn't help but cough violently a few times. He knew that this must have been instructed by Professor Dumbledore, but what did Professor Dumbledore mean? Let him put on the Sorting Hat and transfer to Slytherin College on the spot to compete with Tom for the position of Slytherin's successor. However, the basilisk summoned by Tom and attacked him directly dispelled his idea. Obviously, even if he was a Parseltongue, the basilisk had its own judgment. Looking at himself, who threw away the Sorting Hat and was chased by the basilisk, Harry was so anxious that he slapped his thigh. What happened to me in the movie? I just threw away the wand and now I threw away the Sorting Hat. After all, this was sent by Professor Dumbledore to help, but thinking about my ability at that time, Harry was relieved. Being able to run away was actually the next moment. Harry saw himself in the movie performing another flat fall. Harry, okay, fear can make people's bodies uncontrollable, which is reasonable. Just when the basilisk was about to eat Harry, there was another familiar cry, and Fawkes appeared and blinded the basilisk's eyes. Huh? At least we can fight now. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. The most difficult thing about a basilisk is its size that can kill you if you look at it. Apart from this, there's only the deadly poison, huge size and strong magic resistance. Harry's expression became more and more wooden. Let's see how he works miracles in the movie. When Harry in the movie pulled out the sword from the Sorting Hat, Harry's eyes widened. What is that? Ron, what is that? What? Of course it is. Harry turned his head and saw Ron with his eyes closed, with a puzzled look on his face. Why are you closing your eyes? The basilisk is out. Although we shouldn't be looking at each other directly, we will be petrified, right, Harry? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.